Good. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome council, administration, and people watching from home. Welcome them to our standing committee meeting of August 25th, 2020. Council, our next business is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any deletions, additions, or change in order of our agenda? Nothing? So I need a motion to accept. I'm sorry, Emily, do you have something?
Nothing.
So yes, sir.
I'll move to adopt the standing committee agenda for August 25th, 2020.
And all those in favor? Thank you. Okay, Wendy, our next item is minute with council. And is this our
Yes, it is.
fellow? Okay, the next thing on our agenda is minute with council, and I just have to take a minute and make a little announcement here. So minute with council is citizens' opportunity to give us your thoughts, your opinions, and your concerns. We're asking that everyone be respectful and take that 1 minute. So, sir, could I ask your name, please?
Hello, my name is Kyle Byer.
Kyle, thank you, Kyle. Kyle, just a couple things. When you're speaking, you need to address the chair. And because I'm deputy mayor right now, that would be me. And another thing with minute with council is we do ask that people not ask questions of council or administration. So here's your minute, sir.
Address you, Joanne, if I can continue. Thank you, everybody, for having me. Hello, my name is Kyle Byer. I represent a local group in Hinton called Let Us Breathe Hinton. I am here to provide information as requested by council in regards to masks. If we're having a debate about wearing masks, there must be a threat to our risk or to our community. The numbers I am providing today are from Alberta Health Services and are current of August 23rd. We currently have 234 deaths in Alberta since February, none in Hinton. The median age of death is 83 years old, and 73% of those people have 3 or more underlying conditions. Now that we've identified the most vulnerable people in our community, those that are over age 80 with 3 or more health conditions, let's do our best to assist and protect them. I've provided government data proving that masks are effective when being used against COVID. I've emailed all councillors and the mayor a copy of the COVID-19 Scientific Advisory Group Rapid Response Report compiled by Alberta Health Services. The document provides all research done into wearing a mask. In effect, it says there's very little scientific studies or research to back the effectiveness of wearing a medical mask or homemade masks to reduce the spread of COVID in our community. This is an Alberta government document, and I hope council gets a chance to read it. They've compiled all the information and research for you. After reading, there should be little doubt to the benefits of masks. We recently had 2 local coal mines shut down, a 3rd under federal review. The oil field in a precarious position with billions being pulled from projects, a pipeline going through town, decides set up an exit, tourism at all times low, stores shut down all over town. The library only partially open, the pool shut down. There's so much more important work that you guys need to get done. I don't think we need to be spending our time debating mask wearing in a town with little risk. To sum up, masks are shown to be non-effective in stopping the spread of COVID. Hand washing and social distancing is the best way to stop the spread. We've identified the most vulnerable. Let's put our resources to protecting them. Not mandated federally, not mandated provincially. Please remember, one size does not fit all. Your personal health is best dealt by you. You alone know your risks, and you alone are best to choose how to migrate your risks and health. I want to take this opportunity to thank council and deputy mayor for giving me this opportunity to speak to you guys.
Thank you, Kyle, very much.
Look forward to watching the rest.
Thank you. So it's come to my attention that our CEO will be speaking about 3 written submissions for minute with council.
That's correct. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Grace. In order to allow for a little bit more flexibility in minute with council, due to the fact that we're not welcoming public in at this time to the committee room. For those that are unable to join us via Zoom, we've allowed for written submissions to come in. And on this topic, there are 3. So I'll read them out to council, first stating name. So the first one is from Tanya Verquin. And her minute with council states, Dear Town Council, I'd like to respectfully express my opinion regarding the subject of making wearing masks mandatory in Hinton. I'm highly opposed to this notion, and if this regulation is passed, my family and I will sadly no longer choose to shop and support local Hinton businesses. Wearing masks is completely unnecessary for the vast majority of people and is much more harmful to wear than beneficial. No one needs to be forced to breathe in their own carbon dioxide and suppress fresh oxygen supplied to their lungs and systems. It is such an unnatural way to exist, covering our faces to those around us, including our families and friends, hiding all facial expressions and emotion, giving the overall sense of needing to avoid and fear other humans, all to prevent the spread of a so-called deadly disease. If it were so deadly, would it really be necessary to test if someone has this deadly disease? Digression, however, there's much more information widely available to all other than what mainstream media is representing. Any businesses in towns that have made mask wearing mandatory has lost their business, including Hinton's Walmart. My family and I will shop online and drive to the towns that don't implement these laws to their citizens. Thank you for your consideration. The next one is from Ken Grote and Shelley Orava. Council, we choose not to wear a mask and express it should always be a choice and is our right. If masks are mandatory, we will choose to shop online instead of supporting our local businesses, as virtually everything can be done this way. Therefore, we've not been to Walmart since they implemented their restrictions. If there was consistent proof that masks actually work and are for the best of all, we may consider that option, but as now it seems that donning masks is just taking the easy way out. There has been an extreme amount of good doctors and scientists who have proven that they are unnecessary and harmful. We are almost out of tourism season now and have 0 cases in town. We truly feel it isn't necessary and feel no one has the right to take away anyone's freedoms in such an oppressive manner. We are grateful to see that the town of Rocky Mountain House has chosen not to make masks mandatory, as they recognize you cannot demand someone wear something that can cause harm. Rocky Mountain House is also concerned that it would put operational strain on the town's peace officers if residents were not compliant or if they received a high volume of complaints. Additional enforcement costs could be possible if the amount of incidences were more than local peace officers could handle, and that the additional costs would be in overtime or additional resources. We will always respect those who wish to wear a mask and ask the same in return. We will always keep our 6 feet distance and respect others, but stand completely against wearing a mask. We appreciate the opportunity to express concerns and ask that you think carefully of the effect you're putting on people who are against the wearing of masks. The final one is from Paris Sear. Dear Council, I choose not to wear a mask as I believe the science does not support its effectiveness. Au contraire, quite detrimental to our immunity. Our oxygen flow is reduced to 16 to 20%. Also, breathing in CO2 is not my idea of promoting health. I believe it should be our free choice to choose. I understand for some that may alleviate their anxiety, feel safer wearing a mask. I respect that's their choice. This whole COVID-19 has many facets played out in the media, mostly fabricated to promote fear. Hopefully we can stand united on this topic and be left with a choice. Thank you for this opportunity to express my opinion.
Thank you, CAO. I would like to thank everybody who took the time to make submissions for Minute with Council. So we're going to carry on with our action items. And the first action item tonight is the naming policy DS6105. And Mr. Vanna will present.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Before you today is the naming policy. The last time the naming policy was looked at was back in 2011 and was created back in 2009. The policy is being updated because we have a number of changes we'd like to make to it, of which, looking at the process, first of all, the number of the names have changed in terms of how the process was carried out. Previously, we've provided council with the task of largely naming. Staff would come to council or to council, and council would agree to name the development areas, roads, parks, public facilities that need to get named. And as well, the previous policy was a little convoluted in the sense of it had a naming list, and of course that naming list was never really approved by council, or was never really followed, and therefore there's some inconsistency as to how names actually got applied as part of the process. So what we've done is we've cleaned up the policy so that it's clear in terms of a process, in terms of a procedure, in terms of how we first of all name things, and also how we rename things. And so that is there. In addition, what I've included in the package for council is the civic addressing and how civic addressing works, because that gets tied to naming of streets and creating of streets and avenues, as well as the naming procedure as well. So that's there for council's information, just so council, to refresh council, the procedures are approved by the CAO. The policy is then approved by council. So I'll leave it there and open it up to any questions. The recommendation is that committee recommends that council approve the policy as presented, and that we rescind our old policy.
Okay, thank you, sir. Council, are there any questions? Yes, sir.
I'd like to direct that committee recommends council approve naming policy DR 6105 as presented, and that committee recommends that council rescind naming policy 079. If I could speak to it, it's not a significant material change. This is just cleaning up and making it a little bit more straightforward and a little bit easier to understand and carry out. Thanks for updating one of the many policies that need updates. Thanks.
Thank you, council. We do have a, would this be a direction or a motion? Direction? Any discussion on this? And seeing none, Councillor Nelson has put a direction on the floor that committee recommends council approve naming policy DR-6105 as presented. And that committee recommends that council rescind naming policy 079. All those in favor? And that's carried. Wendy. So our next action item is civic partnerships and community group funding.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the budget process for 2020, Council and Administration discussed the funding provided to civic agencies, which spanned from organizations with existing agreements with the town to events and to partnerships. Council provided direction in February of this year to bring back a phase 1 report on civic agencies to support decisions related to the allocation of funds prior to budget deliberation for 2020. Substantial research has gone into this report by Ms. Way and Mr. Baez to understand how other communities manage the requests they receive for funding or support, as well as those agreements or donations. The first step in preparing a policy to provide this framework for funding decisions is to create defined partnership categories that can serve as a guide and allow council to assign dollar amounts or limits to categories if they so wish further into the budget process. At this point, if Ms. Way has any items within the report to briefly highlight to assist council in understanding the process, otherwise we'd be happy to receive council's questions on this item.
Ms. Way, no, nothing to add? Okay. Council, do you have any questions? And Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No question, but I would like to move that committee direct administration to develop a civic partnership policy and procedure based on the categories presented.
And would you like to speak to that, sir?
I would like to speak to it quickly. First, I want to express my appreciation to administration for coming back with this report. I think this goes a long way in helping to clarify for council and administration and the agencies in our community where they would fall in a civic agency structure and what the parameters are for meeting criteria for the different levels. I think it brings a lot of clarity, and I look forward to seeing this move forward towards next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So, Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, so Olson, through the chair, what is the timeline for this policy coming back to council?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through to Councillor Nelson. We recognize that something needs to be put in place prior to getting too deep into the budget process. So we would be looking to bring something back as soon as possible, looking at the number of meetings that we have in September. Might not be possible to meet the September 15th standing committee meeting, in which case it would come to the next one in October. But we were looking to have something in place to assist council through this budget process.
And Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for Councillor Nelson asking that question. That was one of mine. But the other, I guess, is the eligibility when we look at, I guess, really anything but category 3, you know, especially with the partnerships and stuff. Is there other municipalities that can be kind of looked at too for like who's eligible for partnerships versus the community grant program, things like that? And if so, and is that, obviously it'll come with the policy, but you know, I think for me, that's a very important part of, you know, where those partnerships and who, because we've had some question over, you know, current partnerships in different organizations, and having that eligibility is going to be a key part of it. So is there, I guess, back to my original question, but is there comparators that we can kind of look at to develop those?
Madam Chair, through to Councillor Hawes, this may be something that Ms. Way can shine some light on through the research that was conducted in preparing the report.
Thank you, CAO Olson. Yes, Councillor Hawes, we did review well over 30 different documents from across the country. When we choose, kind of pick and choose for the policy, I can make sure to include some of those for your reference if you like. Largely what you'll find is that the partnerships that are developed are based on 2 things. So the first being how much oversight the group would like to have operationally from council, from administration. And then of course, the second thing being how much involvement council has with the partnership and the process. So what I'm looking to do specifically for category 2 would be to build kind of a checklist for administration so that when a group approaches us, each group goes through the same kind of vetting system to help kind of give council an idea of where that group falls in. And ultimately you guys would have the final decision as to whether or not that is a true partnership, or rather perhaps they reside as a community grant.
Can I follow up?
Yes, sir.
So just one other thing, looking at partnerships in our committees, but if we do go with more partnerships per se, are we looking at then more committees that council would be a part of as well? Is that something that other comparators have also been, that they're on the board or whatever in those partnerships?
Yeah, so that was one of the things that really stuck out, was that as you kind of go up the chain, there definitely was kind of split down the middle as far as councillors being on those boards and committees. So that would be at your discretion, but we would certainly look to be writing the policy that way.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So back to the timeline, we'd be looking at the earliest would be November 3rd that we would be able to pass a bylaw at regular council. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, through to Councillor Nelson, I would have to take a look at the timelines. It depends on whether council is willing to provide all three readings in one meeting. Understand the concern that is quite far into the budget process. On September 8th, the budget, the reporting schedule or the schedule for budget 2021 is coming forward to council to provide an understanding of the times we'll be coming before you and the work that's going on in preparation for. I would have to review and work out that timeline more concretely, but understand the intention of the question.
Councillor Nelson.
Could I follow up? Yeah, I think understanding the capacity challenge we've had, this is coming back later than we had hoped. And to me, if we're waiting on probably the most political chunk of our budget, which is civic agencies, for a policy to come forward, because of AUMA and that usually falls in, our meeting schedule isn't great for standing committee meetings over the next couple months. And if November 3rd is the earliest that we're likely to be able to pass this at regular, if it passes, to me, I want to give administration direction on civic agencies far prior to that. I don't want to leave too many things late in the game with administration. I want us to provide them with the tools to build a really good budget as early as possible. And November 3rd to me is too far down the road. If it's the intention of council to pass a policy regardless and not have to wait for the policy in order to be comfortable with where we're at with civic agencies for budget 2021, then I could support it. But if the intention is to wait for it to be complete before we make those decisions for budget 2021, I wouldn't be in favor of it. So, thank you.
Just looking at the timelines, and I have reached out to administration to determine what a practical timeline would be. Looking again, it likely wouldn't come before council for the 15th. The next standing committee meeting is the 13th, depending on the level of conversation and what needs to occur from there. Again, we can look at the research that's been done already has looked at policy frameworks and what's included and how it's been approached. I'm hesitant to commit to bringing that any sooner without conferring with staff first. So unfortunately, I can't give a concrete answer on that, but it would likely be coming before council on the 13th of October for a first look.
Good, thank you. Councillor Nelson, are you good?
Good, right?
Okay. Councillor Haas?
Yeah, and I'm also, about the timeline, and it's very important to bring it in. And I think this is something that could and potentially warrant a special council meeting to potentially, if earlier, can come to get it in there before the policy potentially. I mean, I realize, but if we, are open to that, I know we're need to be cautious of different special meetings, but granted, because it is an important part of the budget, and having policy, I think, is really important because there's been a lot of back and forths over the last 2 years, 3 years in regards to this. So, I think there's options that are available to us as well that can to get this through a lot faster, potentially before the budget. So.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just confirming that it would be coming forward on the 13th, and just also to highlight that what that policy would be built on is the categories that you're looking at tonight. So it should look familiar, and hopefully the intention of bringing forward these categories to council to get an understanding if we're moving in the right direction for building that policy, and to have a little bit of conversation around any other expectations that council might have for that policy development. And again, the research has been done, it's just writing that policy and then bringing it forward to council.
Thank you, CEO. Yes, sir, I know. Mayor Michaels?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Considering we're going 3 weeks without a meeting from September 15th to October, I forget what date it is in October, I suggest we just have a standing committee meeting on September 22nd, unless there's people aren't available, or if they made prior plans, maybe we have a special meeting on a different day, but ideally the venue is a standing committee to have a first look. AUMA, we're not attending in person. The stuff that is for AUMA is during the day, a 4 o'clock meeting on the 22nd. We're having longer agendas. I say we, I don't know the process, if we can approve that at a standing committee meeting to create a standing committee new date on the 22nd of September. But that would be my recommendation, that we just have a standing that day, look at it the 22nd and pass it early enough in October. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Nelson, just 1 minute. CAO, are you able to add some clarity or some more to this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I misunderstood my response that I received from staff. There is potential that we could turn this around for September 8th and bring it forward at that point, which again, regardless of an additional meeting, standing meeting in September, would give council a first look. I mean, like I said, the research is done. It's just creating and writing that policy and getting it ready.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor Nelson.
Thanks for that clarification. I'm happy you went to CAO Olson first, because that changes my entire strategy of my next comment. I'd like to propose an amendment, or a friendly amendment, just to add September 8th as the date to standing committee, September 8th. If I could speak to it, I was planning to put an amendment forward to implement as part of the 2022 budget, with the intention if we could bring it forward sooner than just rescinding that, just so we don't hold administration up from bringing things forward on a policy that we may or may not approve. But if this has a date of September 8th on it, it allows us to pass it if we do all 3 readings on the 15th, which to me, September 15th versus November 3rd is a huge difference in what I hope to be a really good budget process. So thank you, Ms. Olson. And Councillor Stash, I'm not sure if you want a friendly amendment or if you want a formal amendment. I'm good either way.
So my question is, we go to the mover of that direction or motion and ask if you would accept an amendment?
That's fine, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, and this is a policy. Is it a policy or a bylaw? CAO? I should probably know this. We're dealing with a policy or a bylaw on this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a policy and then a procedure based on that.
Yeah. So would we need 3 on a policy, just 1 vote?
Just one.
Yeah, just
that's
one.
correct.
Yeah, so. Okay, good. So, Ms. Anderson, good. We do have a direction or a motion on the floor from Councillor Stashik. Is there any more discussion on this before I read this? Okay, that committee direct administration to develop a civic partnership policy and procedure based on the categories presented at the September 8th, 2020 standing committee meetings. Good. Councillor Stashik?
I think Ms. Anderson wants to amend to clarify the wording, because it sounds like it was presented on
Yes,
September
yeah,
8th.
It
So
does.
we can just wait till she's.
And I think that might.
Okay. So you've changed it to and bring to the September 8th, 2020 standing committee meeting.
I'm fine with the wording, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, sir. Council, all those in favor? And carried. And Council, before we move on to our next action item, I hope you will excuse me and allow me to make this little statement. I was going to do it at the very beginning of our meeting and I didn't. So I'm sure all of us here are recognizing that Councillor McGowan is not here, and people who are watching from home recognize that Councillor McGowan is not here. And with his permission, I am able to say that he is absent, and with his dear wife in the city who has had surgery. And we are all wishing Nikki the very, very best and a really healthy, speedy recovery. And we're looking forward to Councillor Nelson coming back home and being part of these meetings.
Me and Councillor McGowan.
I'm sorry?
Me and
Oh, not
McGowan.
Councillor Nelson, Councillor McGowan. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. And if you get sick, we hope you get a speedy recovery too. Okay. All right, so moving on. Maybe I'll put my glasses on. Our next action item is Recreation and Parks User Fees Policy 082, proposed amendments. And our CAO, Emily Olson, will be presenting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In May 2019, Council provided direction to administration to bring policy 082 forward for discussion prior to the end of August 2020. Administration and Council over time have received requests for the waiving or reduction of fees for the use of town-owned recreation facilities as well as open green spaces, such as the area along the learning and leisure corridor between the curling rink and Barrow Safety Services. As the policy and fee schedule will undergo a more thorough review and update at the end of the 3-year term, which is up spring/summer of 2021, the review and amendments provided in this report are limited to the issue of free and reduced fee rates to provide for these types of requests from patrons. Amendments include reduced rate structure for multi-day events, free access to meeting room or amenity spaces for special events booked for the pool and or arena, and a rate structure for charitable organizations. As well, the proposed amendment to the policy would allow for council to waive fees while remaining in compliance with the policy. Ms. Howard and Mr. Van Claveren are both present tonight to support council's discussion and to answer any questions that they may have. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO. Council, do you have questions? And Councillor Nelson.
Firstly, I'm really happy this is being updated. There's certain things that I love as a councillor being involved with. There's certain things that are better suited for the people who are running those facilities to manage. My only question really came from the definition of charity event and how that differs from a non-profit event or non-profit organization. Looking at most of the users, especially with tournaments, they're all non-profits. And I just want to make sure that we're clear with all these organizations, the difference between a charity event and a non-profit event.
Madam Chair, through to Councillor Nelson. So I'll provide a bit of an explanation and look to Ms. Howard or Mr. Van Claveren to add. So the difference being between a charity event and a nonprofit organization is the charitable status that's required in order to receive that rate. So it's detailed in the report and again in the policy as well. Ms. Howard or Mr. Van Claveren, is there any additional comment to the developing of the definition for charity event that you'd like to share?
Thank you, CAO.
I'll chime in then. So yeah, the majority actually of our nonprofit organizations are youth and they're registered societies. So most of them already get 50% off their fees at the reduced rate. So that would be the only thing I added, other than yes, the charitable status is there. It is difficult to achieve and maintain. So there's very few of those right now. Most of our events are run by nonprofit groups, so they would not get the extra 50 on top of the other 50% they're already getting.
Thank you, Ms. Horace. And any more discussion, Council? So I would, yes, Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move that committee recommend council approve amendments to Recreation and Parks User Fee Policy number 082 as presented. I can speak to it quickly if I may.
Yes.
I think these are good amendments to this existing policy to bring additional clarity to the user groups who are requesting things and beneficial clarity as well, so that there's additional clearness about what's available to them and what the rates are and their ability to access those. So anything that brings additional clarity to a policy, I would certainly appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ostashik. And Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to it. I mean, it also helps us as council too, having a policy like this, because there's it's come to, the table in different organizations looking for different spaces, things like that. And we're kind of on the fly where this policy is clear and what the rates are. And then if there is any donations, particularly, it's also laid out in here as well. So I appreciate this policy and the addition to definitely the green spaces. It also, I think, will help some of our organizations in regards to, using spaces and not having to rent them, and over a period of time, whether it's 2, 3, 4 days and stuff like that. So that will help with financially as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. And any more discussion from council on this? Okay, so we do have a direction on the floor, and I will call the question. That committee recommend council approve amendments to Recreation and Parks user fee policy 082 as presented. All those in favor? And Wendy, that has passed. Thank you. And the next item on the agenda is our solid waste collection route options. And presenting, no, is our CAO presenting or Mr. Hawk? You are presenting, Emily? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll begin with just a short introduction and then look to Mr. Hawk if he would like to add anything further, and then receive your questions as well, Council. Council received a report on the solid waste management program at the July 14th regular council meeting, which included options for the modernization of the town's waste collection system. During that discussion, questions pertaining to the anticipated routes for collection were posed, as the large blue bins and residential alleyways are to be removed. In some areas, the Front Street can be congested with traffic, and administration was asked to review route options to determine in which areas waste collection would take place through bin placement in the alleyway, what would be possible in that regard. Mr. Hawk and his team assessed each area to determine the impacts of Front Street versus back alley collection, as well as the potential safety concerns or challenges that are related to both. The findings were that in most cases, Front Street pickup was safe and efficient, with the following exceptions. Sutherland Avenue from Collins Road to Whistler Way is a congested street front, parking on both sides, close to school with bus pickup in the morning, crossings for children attending school, as well as 27 to 30 homes in Hinton that have very poor or no access to the Front Street. At this time, the recommended action is to accept this information, this report as information, and provide direction to administration to implement these collection routes as operationally safe and efficient. If council has any questions, or Mr. Hawk, if you have anything to add to clarify, welcome your comments as well.
Thank you. Actually, further what said, the CEO said, you can see only one street, the Sutherland. Because of the condition, we recommended a back alley pickup. And the good thing is the back alley on both sides of that particular street is wide enough. Though we have to provide additional maintenance in those areas, and until we have any further, that how we can deal with the Front Street parking. For now, we are recommending for a back alley pickup on that particular section of the road. Other than that, the other area is safe to pick up from Front Street. Thank you.
Councillor Haas.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for breaking it down in each area. That's great to take a look at that and to, and identifying the back alley in that area, as we know that street is congested. I guess just again, one question in regards to the routes. Noticing that we have 16 homes that are in the Lower Hill area where the physical challenges to get it, and there's another 7, I believe, in Thompson Lake. I'm just curious, it talks about potential solutions and stuff are in down the road. Is that a solution that the town falls on the hands of the town to do? Is that something the homeowner will have to do? And you know, I'm just curious how that looks.
Thank you for the chair to come to the house. We identified, I think 28 to 30 homes like that.
Mm-hmm.
And each individual house actually we have to deal to its, you know, standalone. And we have to do a proper consultation with each and every resident.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the house, for example, though we identified because of the stair, but now currently the homeowner actually put the single bin in the front. So we have to talk to them and then whether they can continue safely, you know, or we need to make arrangement somewhere else.
Okay.
That's why those identified area we will be dealing in consultation with the residents for those challenge area.
Okay. And if I may, Madam Chair,
Yes.
that's good to hear, because I mean, to have the homeowner deal with that, you know, but to work with them and figure out an option is great and is safe, of course. So that's good. But the rest, yeah, as I said, I got some questions in regards to the bins themselves, but that is another part of the conversation, correct? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Nelson.
I'd like to direct the standing committee accept the solid waste collection route options report for information and direct administration to implement the collection routes as operationally safe and efficient. I might speak to it briefly. Yeah, this is going to be something that evolves a little bit. There's going to be challenges we don't know about yet and opportunities that we don't know about yet. And the biggest thing this report does for me and for the citizens is there's no surprises anywhere. People know what's coming, and I just really appreciate having those tools to go to citizens that pick up the phone and say, hey, what's happening on my street? I've got everything I need to provide them that information. So thanks for the level of detail, and I appreciate the thought that went into it. I think this is going to be a great program as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. I have me next. So CAO, may I address Mr. Hawk? So in coming up with this report, was consideration given to possible one-way traffic on Sutherland or one-side parking on the street to assist you in picking up the waste, or were you waiting for the bylaw 1023, the traffic bylaw, to come back to us?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and you answered partly already. And actually, me and the Protective Services Manager, Mr. Martin, we are talking about the traffic bylaw for a few months. And yes, as part of this, we talked a little bit, but we know that we have to build this separately. And that's why in the beginning I mentioned that yes, in the beginning we could recommend Front Street, but in that case, we had to come up with some kind of traffic bylaw amendment to make sure that on the pickup day, there is no parking or one-side parking or one-way traffic or whatever. So to avoid that, and that's why in the beginning I mentioned that for now, we will be implementing on the back alley, and in the future, if we can come up with any bylaw amendment on that particular section, then accordingly we will revise to make it operationally safe and efficient.
Good, good. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question for administration, in the future, as this plays out and understanding that issues may come up, what would be the process to change one street or one section? Or how does that dialogue happen with administration in a certain area? And Upper Hill is sort of my focus on Emerson and those areas. There's no safety issue with going in the lane, but it's more of it's okay to go in the front. How do potential changes to this look like in the future based on concerns or preferences from residents?
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the chair. As I mentioned, these are operationally, and every time when we will feel there is operational challenges with regards to efficiency, with regards to safety, we will be dealing with them in consultation with the residents. But say we are implementing 20 Street and in 6 months, couple residents want to change it to the back alley. It will be challenging unless the entire section of the road residents come to an agreement that yes, everybody need that on the back alley. Then and only then we may consider to, and again, those has to be safe and operationally efficient. So say we are moving forward with the implementation and in 6 months, if a few or couple resident want to change, it will be challenging to change. Rather, we'll be working with them, if is there any concern that we can, address them and we can solve the problem, we'll be looking into that option.
May I follow up?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that, Mr. Hawk. And just to clarify, since this is just a report to take for information, this won't be coming to regular. This is just going to be the status quo from now on, correct?
That is
okay.
Our understanding.
So if I may, I personally, to my knowledge from previous conversations, I don't think we're impacted in time by waiting, but a 4-day turnaround, I still want to talk to residents on getting their input. Most of the areas are well described and due to safety, I totally understand. I don't want those areas, but there are areas that maybe not as efficient, but there's no safety issues. And I haven't had that opportunity to turn around and sort of approve this. That would be the reason I would vote against this. I would like for this to come back to the next standing committee for us, or next either regular or no, we could do it at a standing, for me to feel comfortable that I got the proper input on certain areas. Like I said, I don't have many concerns, but there are a few areas that I see no reason why we can't use the back alley. And for that reason, I'll be voting against the motion right now, or the direction. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Hart. And Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, rather than voting against that, would I recommend potentially doing a motion to postpone the decision? Or, if you don't have an issue with it itself, but just aren't ready yet, I think defeating it is probably, I'm fine either way.
CEO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking for some clarification from council then on the expectation around changing front pickup to back alley pickup, if it's based on what residents are requesting, or whether it's based on, so the assessment that was done was based on safety and efficiency. Currently, residents on Emerson Drive have pickup in the front, but they have individual black bins. So I just want to clarify, should we expect requests coming through from residents to change outside of what we're talking about here? Or I guess, are we just looking at engagement through the residents at Emerson or throughout the community based on this report, to manage expectations of administration on what we may be asked to do in the future?
I'll give it a shot. I think there are a few areas, Emerson being one, and the Hill. Like I said, it's broken down. The Hill area has a few areas where it's not safety related. It's more efficiency. The safety is undeniable. I understand if there's safety issues. I am okay with those other areas having front access. But if it's just efficiency, sometimes I believe residents have their say in what the service and what they want to pay for. And if they want to pay for something that's less efficient but more ease of use for them to have in the back, hypothetically, like I said, I haven't had an ability to see this and get enough feedback from residents. Those are the ones I want to highlight. So it's balancing the preference versus efficiency only is my concern. So I don't know if that helps to your question, but this was done without the preference model. It was more just efficiency on an operational based on dollars only.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Hawk.
Actually, it's not just based on efficiency and safety, rather the additional need for the maintenance, the snow clearing in the back alleys. Normally in the back alleys during the winter month, we don't do snow clearing. So it will be challenging not only for the operator, but also it will be challenging for the residents to take their bins and put it in the back alley as well. So we consider that perspective as well, so that it's not just only safety. And also during the winter months, we listed that because of the shorter day, we have the darkness in the morning. So it will be challenging for the residents as well to take them from the front, and put them in the back alley as well, because back alley normally we don't have the street lights.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, administration, for some of that clarity and Councillor Nelson's suggestion. So I'd rather take that advice and whether it wins or loses. I'd like to make a direction to postpone this to the September 8th meeting. And the reason is, like I said, I haven't had the time to really talk to people in all the areas, or at least the areas that I have concern with, to feel comfortable just moving forward with this today. But understanding that the majority of this I do like, and it gives us the information, including myself, to be able to stand behind it. But I think waiting 2 weeks would be of my preference to pass this, since it's not a motion that comes to regular council. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The CAO, I do have a question for Mr. Hawk. So is there any impact on garbage pickup if this is postponed or deferred for 2 weeks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, as we are moving forward with the bin choice, we will start the survey for the different fee structure that we will be proposing council for consideration. I'm just waiting for the sample bins to arrive physically. We order them so that residents have an opportunity to look into the physical size, which size, say a 96 gallon or a 64 gallon or a 48 gallon will satisfy their need. That's why I ordered three set each, so that we can display for residents to come and have a look to determine. So that will be moving forward. And we are working on tendering the garbage truck. So I think the delaying this report for 2 weeks should not impact our overall implementation. However, the other report, yes, will have some impact on the implementation.
Okay. So what you're saying is a 2-week delay will not have any significant impact on our town? Because
at this time, we are not expecting any impact on the overall implementation.
Okay, good. Thank you, sir. And Councillor Haas.
Yeah, I guess my only concern to Mayor Michelson to postponing this is the intent of it, because if we hear back from them, and we're going to have some people probably saying it's fine, some people they want to change, and ultimately we're not going to be able to please everybody, to be honest with you. And I'm looking at this, and quite frankly, majority of people are doing front already pickups. There's very few that are in the back alleys and impacted. And unfortunately, I mean, I regardless of the potentially there's the I guess if you want is giving the thought that might change things, and it potentially may not in postponing it. I mean, just because one resident wants it in the back alley, I think it's clearly stated that, it's that one, it's the safety. Two, I mean, ultimately the whole goal of this is efficiency. We're changing a system over to be more efficient and cost effective. So, I mean, I'm confident that if residents have concerns, we're already working with a number of residents that have issues about the front, and I'm sure that administration would be more than likely or happy to discuss possibly, and if there is anything that can be done to assist and help with that, I'm confident that the administration can do that. So I just don't feel it personally necessary to postpone it based on the information that's given to us, and the end result of having those conversations with some of those residents. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Nelson.
I'll be voting in favor of the postponement. I think, again, with there being no major issues, one of the challenges I've had over the last week or 2 weeks is once people knew that masks were on the agenda today, it really sucked all the life out of everything else that we were dealing with. Every email, every phone call, pretty much has been all around masks. And if there's some citizens that haven't been heard yet, I'd rather hear from them before we make our, I think before we make a direction. It's easier to make some changes if we need to, or ask some more questions if we need to before we've made that direction. So I'm happy seeing this come back in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Okay. I do have one question. Did you do an amendment to Councillor Nelson's direction?
It's a direction, if I may, it's a direction to postpone, so we'd be voting just on the postponement only. And then if that is voted down, then we would go to the main direction.
Okay.
So if I may?
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Councillor Stasek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share a lot of the concerns that Councillor Hawes spoke to, in that delaying this, for 2 weeks isn't going to cause an issue. But if there's subsequent direction from council to administration to start changing routes around, then it is going to start significantly delaying this process. And I think that administration, and by extension council, is going to learn more after the implementation stage than they are through consultation. I think there's enough flexibility in the route options that if there is a requirement for change subsequent to implementation, then it can be implemented. So if it turns out that there is a huge logistical challenge that nobody saw, then it can be addressed at that point. Routes can be changed, shuffled around, and changed at that time. So I am cognizant of potential ongoing delays, and that's why I'm not going to be supporting the amendment that's before us at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor Michaels.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to make it very clear. I totally understand why somebody would support this, but to the point that Councillor Hawes made regarding administration could work with them, I forget how you stated, that's the reason I'm asking for the delay, because by approving operationally safe and efficient, every conversation with the resident and administration is going to be based on us supporting an efficient process. So that means they will never take preference or things of that nature. And that's why that would be a council decision above and beyond something efficient. And that's why I want to delay it. Now, if you believe in being efficient and operational, absolutely, right? Support that. But my concern is that there are certain areas that might be efficient to do it in the front, but I'd like to get the feedback. Should we as a council go above and beyond administration's recommendation to say, maybe let's not be efficient there? That's all. I think I'll support this anyways in 2 weeks. But the concept is, if we approve it this way, those conversations to change routes won't happen. It'll be just based on efficiency, which we support. So I want to kind of lay that, that's why I'm pushing the other way. But I understand if we just want efficient, that'll be the will of council. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a question for you, Mr. Mayor. Are we talking 4 households, 15 households? How many households do you think you're speaking to right now?
If I may, I don't know, ballpark a few. It could affect a few hundred. Like the Hill area has a bunch of lanes that are safety approved but not efficiently approved, right? Those are those areas. Emerson, like I said, the Hill has a big chunk of them. In the Valley, I think there's a few of them, not many, that could be affected by this. And it's just to look at, and maybe that's a question for administration. Maybe they have that data on subtracting all the safety ones, but I think it's well into 100 more potentially.
So CAO, I would like to address Mr. Hawk. My concern is if we delay this, it's another report that we've delayed. Okay, so we're waiting another 2 weeks, and so if we move this along tonight, and we do have 50 people, 50 homes saying to us, you know what, we don't like this. It's not safe, it's not efficient. Will you then have a conversation with these people and try to work out something that is beneficial?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I mentioned earlier, and I'll repeat that if we see any challenges on any specific location, we will have a conversation, we will have a consultation with the resident. And without having that consultation, we are not going to, make it that no, you must place them in the front. We will evaluate the situation, and then we will have a discussion with the residents, and then we will come up with a solution, and we'll implement accordingly.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right. Is there any further discussion from council? So the first one we will look at is Mayor Michael's, and call the question that the solid waste collection route options be postponed until the September 8th, 2020 meeting. All those in favor? Those opposed? And it is carried, Wendy. I'm sorry, defeated. Yes, Councillor Nelson.
I'd like to propose an amendment to have the last portion.
Sorry, I was just gonna, so we can see people.
So the amendment would be that the end read routes as operationally safe, efficient, and convenient to residents. I'm doing a formal amendment though, so it almost has to be a separate thing.
Yeah. See, I'm sorry, may I interrupt you? CAO, are you able, is a person able to amend their own motion?
I think Councillor Nelson is suggesting this is a formal amendment that council would vote on. So yes.
Operationally safe, efficient, and convenient residents. If I could speak to it, I think Mayor Michaels brought up a lot of really important points, and by adjusting the wording to include convenient to residents, that takes care of, as long as it's safe, if there are opportunities where it is significantly more convenient to residents, and doesn't impact efficiency significantly, then administration has the tools at their disposal to make those decisions on their own without it being a council decision. I really have no interest in citizens coming to council and saying, hey, we've always done it out the back. It's a lot easier. We have mobility challenges. We have all of these things. I know it would be more efficient to have it in the front, but this street makes more sense from a convenience standpoint to residents to have it in the back. And I appreciate Mayor Michaels bringing that information forward. And to me, this is, if we're making this decision tonight, this gives administration the leeway to make the best decisions for our community as a whole, not just for the efficiency of the program. Thank you.
Councillor Hawes, do you mind if I go to CAO?
Yes, please.
CAO Olson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My concern with the inclusion now of convenient is that they're all weighted the same within the motion. With the context and the discussion around the motion, I can understand what's being proposed, that as long as it's, safety and efficiency are achieved, that convenience could be part of that conversation as well. I worry that given time, it'll be confusing as to what we're trying to achieve if convenience trumps safety. I mean, logically you would assume no, but that's my concern.
May I please just add a few?
Mr. Hawk.
If we add the convenience, say in one street, there are 10 residents. And out of 10 residents, say 4 of them, they feel convenient in the back alley, and 6 feel convenient in the front. In that case, we will face a huge operational challenge in the implementation. That means for each and every case, we have to do a consultation with each and every resident, and then maybe we will end up with picking on back alley as well as in the front.
Councillor Hawes, I know you're waiting, but I want to know, Councillor Nelson, do you want to respond to what CAO?
Yeah, I think if in order to capture the discussion better, if it's an amendment where it says, and convenience is considered where sensible, or something like that, where it shows where it shows less weight on convenient, I'd be fine with that, because that's ultimately the intent of it.
Councillor Haas.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I won't be supporting this. I think there's so much ways you can read into this, and as my head was the same way, and now you got residents, upset with each other that, you guys didn't want front and we wanted back, and I think it just complicates things further. I think keeping it more simple, and I think the context in itself, the discussion, if need be, would be part of that, and if there's any way around it. So I know that one word can change things a lot, but it can also create a lot of difficulties as well. So I won't be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Councillor Stashwick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would potentially support the amendment provided that the wording around convenience is softened. I share the same concerns that perhaps one person on a street would say, well, that's not convenient for me, so I want mine in the back, whereas the whole rest of the street is in the front. I think that would significantly negatively impact efficiency, and convenience is great provided it's widely convenient and doesn't significantly affect efficiency. So to reiterate, yeah, if the wording is softened a bit, I could support it, but with equal weighting, I can't. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Can we ask Ms. Anderson to, thank you. And if I may, I have the same train of thought, and I see some head nodding. If we can focus, and I appreciate Councillor Nelson's openness to this, because this puts a hard wall against, and I always say this, we don't know what administration will be in place in a year. And when you read this is safety and efficiency, and it's a hard no right away. So if we can get that wording right, I think it's extremely important, because it gives the latitude and the discretion to administration to work on it. And if council is not happy of that day, they can also then exercise their right to change it. But flexibility, I think, will be important here. And as we try to wordsmith this, I'll end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Nelson.
And at risk of a run-on sentence, I think, and convenient to residents when operationally safe and efficient are achieved. So basically saying if you have safety and you have operational efficiency, then we consider convenience. I think the concerns about citizens coming forward in regards to convenience, I think ultimately they would come forward half for, half against, and come to council, and now council's making that decision where administration might be able to work it out in a far more efficient manner. So that's probably a horrible sentence, and I'm happy to take some changes wherever council sees best.
So I just have to say, I like operationally safe and efficient, because that kind of follows a recommended action that administration is offering to us. And then you have put in are achieved. Achieved is an issue to me. So, Councillor House.
CEO was then first.
CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My thoughts on the inclusion of convenience in general, I suppose. I'm trying to frame my thoughts here. So when administration did this review, it focused on safety and efficiency, and part of that safety of using the back alleys or not included the ability for vehicles to pass, the congestion in different areas, snow removal considerations, and we really only proposed moving ahead with back alley collection in an area where it was less efficient and less safe to do it on the front street. So convenience never did enter into that, because in those other areas, safety and efficiency, even though there was space in the back alley and maybe no overhead lines, the congestion, the oncoming traffic for people that have maybe back alley access to their garages and parking, all of those things were considered as well. So I'm concerned at how administration will manage the requests moving forward. There's a lot of gray area in how we are to make this decision, because if there's a certain neighborhood with folks that are saying it's more convenient in the back alley, we may still say no due to the safety and efficiency, as long as that's understood. Again, we want to minimize the number of residents coming to council as well to bring this to your attention. But this is how the decisions were made and how the report was structured. I just want to highlight that in other areas, those considerations extended to that as well.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, I guess how I read this is it's just basically going to be a no every time, is to reiterate, because it's safe and efficiency is what it's based on. And convenience, it's always going to then go back to, because right now, if it would be convenient or if it would be safe and efficient, they would be in certain places. So I think it's just a runaway, giving the opportunity, the chance that maybe it might change, but it's convenient, but it's still not, it's then the safety and efficiency. So I'm sorry, but I can't go with this wording the way it is. I mean, could be in agreement of different wording, potentially softening it, but it still complicates things with this, in my opinion. So it starts a circular conversation that, eventually will be, no, it's going to be safe and efficient, and convenience comes out of it. So I can't support the wording the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm comfortable with the change in wording here. I think it addresses the fact that with all things being equal regarding safety and efficiency, if the consideration or the convenience of the citizens then comes into play, and if the majority of the citizens feel it's more convenient for them to use the back alley rather than the front as has been proposed, and it's still just as safe and just as efficient, then the leniency could go towards the back alley pickup per the residents' convenience. And that's why I'm comfortable with this and I can support this. Thank you.
Councillor Hawes.
So I guess the question to administration is based on that. So when you look at efficiency and you look at all the other things, whether it might be safe, but say, for example, you said the snow removal is not done as many times. So those things would be taken into account. So if one area said, we want them in the back alley, but then the efficiency of then increased snow removal in the back and stuff like that, that would be also considered, correct?
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Yes, if we choose to go back alley, we have to increase the level of maintenance in the back alley.
Right.
Otherwise, it will not be safe for our operator, as well as it will not be safe for some of the residents. So I think, to me, the safety covers quite a few things that is being listed here in the first page. It's quite a few things actually is covered under the safety. It's not safety for the operator, it's safety for the residents as well. So I don't know, of course, if we want to keep it safe or efficient, then maybe we need to increase the level of maintenance in the back alley in those areas. And I don't know, people might be challenging us without updating our snow maintenance policy. If we just go and for the sake of garbage pickup, you start doing the snow clearing on the back alley, some other area will be demanding the snow clearing from the back alley as well. So we have to go and bring back the snow maintenance policy as well.
But if I may, but that goes to the efficiency, right? Like in those decisions. So thank you. Tyler.
Councillor Watt.
Thank you. Question for administration. Just curious, with the options and alternatives, why we included as operationally safe and efficient at the end of that recommendation. We seem to be spending a lot of time trying to wordsmith for a lot of different scenarios that haven't theoretically happened. So it just seems to me that it would clean up everything if we just said implement the collection routes or as presented. I guess, but I want to know the motivation for wording it that particular way.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair. So our goal or our intent was that those specific challenges that we have to work with the resident and to make sure that whatever the option we will choose together, it is safe and efficient as well. That's why we use the terminology safe and efficient. We will not just force them, that no, you must, put the bins in the front. So it has to be safe for them. It has to be safe for the operator as well. And of course, we have to look into the efficiency as well.
Okay, so it's relevant to the, okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Stashak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a clarifying question for administration, and then depending on the answer, potentially a follow-up, if I may.
Yes.
So my question to administration, a couple times now it's been mentioned that there may need to be an increase in service level regarding snow removal in back alleys. And I'm a bit confused and need some clarification on why that would be, considering there's already back alley pickup of bins in those back alleys. Why would there need to be an increased service level for picking up the smaller bins in the same back alleys?
Chair, so let's Chair to Councillor first. Right now, the blue bins are placed in a localized, it's not throughout the back alleys. That's why it need less effort to pick them from one spot. But when we will start placing the bins in the back alley for the entire back alley, then there is a need for snow clearing in the back alley.
Can I follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes, certainly.
Is that logistical reasons for the waste collection truck so that it's not getting stuck in the ice if it's on a hill? I'm still not really, or is that for the convenience of the residents so that they can more easily put their bins out? I'm still not really understanding why there's an increased need for additional maintenance.
Kevin, if you could just help me from just, from the operational experience.
Sure. So, thanks, Andy. So speaking to that, right now, like as Embed was saying there, our bins are spaced quite a distance apart. We average, 12 houses per blue bin right now. So you're only picking that every 12 houses. So with regards to operational, if every person is putting a bin on the back alley, depending if you, just for an example, if you had 2 houses back to back like this and the grader goes through, you're going to have a windrow on one side, right? So that's going to be right there. So if those people are trying to put their small black bins there, that's going to cause a problem from the get-go, right? So just little things like that. And then instead of picking up, 1 bin for 12 houses, we're going to be picking up 12 bins for 12 houses. So that much more little problems, every back alley, this person over here might have a slope, like we've had issues in the back alley. Couple slopes there where we've actually had our trucks slide down the hills, so it's just more maintenance, more getting sanding trucks out there, having 12 tow trucks in those little situations and stuff. So just it kind of will, the more we have, the more it's going to build up into operational issues, I would say.
I'm good, Madam Chair.
You're good? Thank you, sir. Any more discussion from council? So we have this amendment and then we have the one before that. Hey, Wendy?
Yeah, we do this one first.
I'm sorry?
We do this one first?
Yes. Alrighty, so we have an amendment offered by Councillor Nelson that standing committee accept the solid waste collection route options report for information and direct administration to implement the collection routes as operationally safe, efficient, and convenient to residents when operationally safe and efficient are achieved. Efficiency are achieved or just efficient? So, all those in favor of this? And opposed? So it is defeated.
So the three again, four were Michael, Nelson.
And Ostasha.
Thank you.
Could you put a D on the end of
Yes,
it? There you go. All right. Now. So any discussion on this before I call the question? All righty. And yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, thank you for the effort and the good dialogue, but I think this is indicative that this came out on Friday. There's only been a few days, a lot of questions. So I'll be speaking against this for the half-hour discussion that happened. So albeit it was close, and I don't think it's the end of the world, that's the reason I'll speak against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I would like to say the reason I will support this is because Mr. Hawk has given me assurance if there is issues with residents, that you will sit with the residents and hopefully come up with a solution that works, that is safe and efficient. And Councillor Nelson.
Just have a clarifying question based on your last statement, Madam Chair. I do believe that Mr. Hawk had mentioned that only if the entire neighborhood wanted a change would a change from what has been presented to us today be achieved. So that's, I just want more for the public. It's not going to affect the way that I vote on this, but understanding, there's some mixed messaging going out to the public if they do have concerns about it, what their steps are. And to me, what I believe their steps are, if we pass this, is coming to council and council making a motion or direction to change the routes, because we've taken, if it's for convenience, if it's for safety or efficiency, that should happen on the back end. But if it's a desire of citizens for whatever reason to change it, that would come through lobbying to council, and council then bringing that to administration for a formal change.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. So CAO, I do have a clarifying question for Mr. Hawk. Sir, would you need the whole neighborhood coming with a complaint, or would you accept individual residents?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, again, going back to my previous example, 15 residents, 5 of them on from Back Alley from Front Alley to Back Alley. Should I just proceed and make the changes and make other 5 people not happy? Or rather, I'll come to council that, okay, I received a complaint from 5 residents on particular street to switch the pickup from the front to the back, and then council will make that decision that time. Otherwise, and I can assure you that in any street, of course, there will be 2 opinions that yes, I feel convenient and I feel safe in the front, and some people will be feeling comfortable and safe and efficient putting them in the back. So if I get, say, considerable number of, it don't have to be the entire community or entire street residents. Rather, once I get a considerable number, then I will come back to council for make a decision.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nelson.
I will still be speaking in favor of the motion that I made some time ago, because I do think it's really well done, and I think the intentions are right. I was hoping that we would give administration the tools to make more of the decisions administratively rather than them coming to council, but that's where we're at. I'm comfortable with that as well, because I don't believe there's going to be a lot of real challenges or considerations. I think they'll be a little bit early just because it's changed, but overall, I think the detail level that this went into will breed a lot of confidence into everybody, and I think it's going to be quite successful. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. So before I call the question, any more discussion from council? Okay, this direction was brought to us by Councillor Nelson. The standing committee accept the solid waste collection route options report for information and direct administration to implement the collection routes as operationally safe and efficient. All those in favor? And opposed? And Mr. Mayor would be the. Thank you very much for your report, sir. And our next action item is number 5, and that is the solid waste management report, our bin options. And that is, CEO, will you be?
Yes.
CEO is starting the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As well, during the discussion on the modernization of Hinton's waste management program, questions were posed regarding the options for, or the options within bin design for bin weight, as well as the availability for locking mechanisms. Both were brought forward during that discussion. This report reviews the available bin options, bins and locks, both aftermarket locks and built-in, and provides council with information on what is available. To take a look at some of the components to the report, the weight, that was a consideration for council during our last discussion. With the exception of the toter bare plastic bin, the weights of the bin are fairly consistent. And then as well, locks with the toter bins, gravity locks are a built-in option, whereas the Duralatch can be added to existing bins or included in future orders of toter bins. For the IPL bins, there's an option with a built-in lock, whereas it can also be ordered without. All bins are tested, wind tested to the industry minimum requirement of wind speeds at 65 kilometers per hour to determine tipping, as well as unlatching or opening of bins. As indicated in the report, due to the options and the variety of choices for bins and some of the similarities between bin choices, administration has not posed a defined option in the recommended action, but we did include a statement in the report that through the research that was provided, the toter regular or IPL MasterCart bins with locking mechanisms, either built-in or aftermarket, would be both cost-effective and provide additional stability with the lid securely latched. Mr. Hawk as well is present, and we're happy to receive your questions.
Thank you, CAO. And Councillor Haas.
I don't know, does Mr. Hawk have anything else to add, or?
No,
Okay.
okay, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the one question I'm looking at, because I mean, I can see the definite change in budget from going to a gravity lock. I do think potentially, personally, I think a lock would be the latch for an extra $10. Now, my one question, if I may, and if there's a couple of, but do those latches come installed, or do we have to install them?
Thank you through the chair, Councillor Haas. Yes, we can ask them to install, and we have the ability to install them at our own as well.
Okay.
And the other thing, that if council choose that particular option, then we will have the ability to purchase another 624 latch for the bins that we purchase for the pilot area.
Okay. And Madam Chair, if you may, one question about the, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just have one question about the 65, because I'm looking at potentially, like, looking at the MasterCart ones being an extra 30,000 more with the gravity, or with that lock, or not the gravity one, but they're both at 65. And my question is that empty or full? Because it doesn't indicate if it's empty or full. I mean, I'm thinking, but maybe you can elaborate on that.
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, Councillor Haas. Yes, actually, we received this from the manufacturer.
Mhm.
So basically, depending on, there is some kind of a mechanism on the bin. There is a bar that if someone wants to use semi-automated, then they need that additional bar. If, in our case, say we'll be using a automated truck, so maybe we don't need the additional bar built in on the bin. So that bar actually makes the difference in the weight.
Okay.
That's why in IPL bin there is a range for the weight, whereas for the product they provided a specific weight for the bins.
Okay, I think I maybe misunderstood, sorry, but it says this, they can be hit by a 65 kilometer wind before tipping over. Sorry, I apologize, I should have been more clear. But I'm just curious, is that empty or full? Because personally, I see them being more tippy when they are empty versus full. And I mean, honestly, I don't mind personally right now my bin going over when it's empty. It's when it's full that it's my issue. So I guess, is the 65 when it's full or empty?
Good question. Actually, I didn't ask that specifically. I did the wind tunnel test for both product, and both actually one of them are tested in the in the American standard, which I converted to 65 km/h, and the other one is Canada made. So we have in the kilometer, but my understanding that the stability test using a tunnel, has to be considering an MTV.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know in the early stages of these conversations, we talked about RFID and how that could be important as we continue to modernize the program, especially if we do some sort of fee for service. The difference per bin is only $10 between the ones that come with RFID and the ones that don't. If we were to take our regular toter bins and say 2 or 3 years from now, install RFID, do we have a range of what adding RFID to a bin would be?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Chair to Councillor Nelson, sorry for the confusion. Actually, all the bins that we are proposing here, the RFID tag will be built in.
That makes my decision more difficult, but thank you.
Okay, good. So yes, Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the clarification about the Duralast system on the toter bins, and I did have a bit of a question. It said that the bins that have already been purchased can be retrofitted with the Duralast latches, and the cost of the latches themselves is $10. Is there any idea what the labor cost would be to install those? And is it easily done to the? Is it logistically easily done to the ones that are already in the field?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through Chair to Councillor. Yes, actually, just so that the locking mechanism, as I mentioned in the report, is relatively new. They started marketing the locking mechanisms in last January, and they sent some brochure, and actually they shipped some Duralatch. The whole idea was I will bring in council chamber for, to show council as well as to public, but unfortunately it was not delivered today. So maybe it will come tomorrow or whatever. So my understanding that installing the Duralatch will be very easy. It will not be very challenging, but to do a actual cost estimate that a labor or a person in 1 hour, how many they can install, we didn't do that estimate yet. But from the mechanism itself, it looks like it's very simple. I watched the video, and the functionality, how it is working, but we didn't do the estimate that in 1 hour, one person, how many they can install. No, we didn't do that estimate.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I think, in my opinion, my recollection, one of the major concerns that citizens had from the pilot project was lids blowing open, and then the birds getting into them and potentially other animals and spreading garbage. So I think adding a latch like the Duralatch system gives that extra assurance that it's actually closed, right? With the lid that just flips shut, it's closed or closed-ish maybe. Not sure. With the latch though, it's a positive latching mechanism where you know that it's whether it's latched or not. So I think that gives a little bit of extra assurance from having the lid blow open and then acting as a sail to help blow the bin over, spilling garbage. It helps keep the birds out. And for what I think to be a fairly nominal cost of about $10 per bin extra, I think if it's council's decision to go with the regular toter bins, it would be a good addition to add the Duralatch system, both retroactively and for the new ones that are ordered moving forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you, Councillor Stashik. Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Stashik. I mean, I'm just looking at it right now, and it's 2 holes and 2 rivets, and it's quite a unique attachment that keeps it, because it just, I for some reason foreseeably saw something at the bottom, but it's not. It's a wheel with that if it does blow open, it catches it, and it just needs to be jerked a little bit to open it up to empty it. So it seems like quite a easy, and I'd like to see them also retrofitted on the existing ones. But I agree, and I think it would also help too when empty, because one of the things I've seen in East Hardisty are people putting things, heavy weights on top of their lids when empty, and I've noticed a lot of them sagging because they put a brick or a cinder block on top, and it's causing them to get deformed, which unfortunately doing that probably doesn't then sit properly and cause it to flip up easier. So I think this would also help in regards to that, which would probably cause us less headache and changing those lids in the future as well, if people are taking it upon themselves to try to keep those lids down. So, so I definitely would like to see personally, if the council, and I'd like to hear more discussion, but, just budgetary wise, looking at the different changes, I'd like to see the Duralatch system with that type A toter regular, due to especially going to the gravity locks, doubling our budget for sure. So, and it didn't sound like from what I saw, the gravity locks was much different except more expensive than the Duralatch system. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes, and I mentioned that in the report. Another benefit for the locking mechanism will help us that if we modernize our bylaw, and if we can just add something that any overfill bin will not be picked. So the locking mechanism will help us managing that perspective as well. So the residents have to lock the lid using the latch.
So I do have a question for administration. If we get the bin and then we get a lock and then we have to put the lock on our bin ourselves?
Again, thank you, Madam Chair. For the new one that we'll be ordering, maybe to avoid any installation cost or anything, maybe we'll be asking the supplier to install them. The only thing we have to look into that when they are shipping them, if it is not creating extra load, then we'll be asking them to attach the Duralatch. But if it creates some extra shipping, then we'll not be asking them. Rather, we'll be doing in-house. And as I mentioned, installing the latch will not be a huge difficulty or anything like that.
Okay, so sorry. So when you say in-house, when the bins come in, then your staff would be putting the locks on the bins. And the existing bins that we have right now in the community down in East Hardisty, will you be retrofitting them with the locks?
Yes.
Okay, good.
So before we deliver the new bins, we will be installing the latch and wheels or whatever. Then a ready bin will be supplied to the new residents, and we will be installing the latch for the pilot area as well.
Okay, good. We don't have a motion on the floor yet, do we, on this? So I do have another question. And have you, two questions actually, on our garbage trucks, is that arm, the articulating arm, can it go left and right pickup from either side or just one side?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, it's a one-sided pickup. It's not from both sides.
Okay.
Okay. So the only changes that we are making in our new truck, that it will be a front pickup. Our existing truck is side pickup,
right.
And the side pickup normally takes a longer time to empty a bin.
Yeah.
And we estimated more than 45 seconds per bin for the existing, whereas it will be less than 25 seconds. I'm very conservative in giving you the 25 seconds. It can be way faster than 25 seconds.
Yeah.
In emptying the bins, because of the height for the side pickup, it travels longer height. Whereas the front pickup, it will be a cargo can in the front, and there will be capacity of say 10 to 12 bin. So they will be very quickly emptying those 12 bin, and then once the cargo can is full, then the operator will empty on the main body of the truck.
Yeah, I realized it was front loading. I was just hoping it had a bit of a, yeah. And my second question is, has there been any discussion on the existing black bins for citizens to keep them should they wish?
As I mentioned earlier, that in Alberta, after us, I think there will be only one community left who will be using these bins, and there will be another community in BC who will be using. So salvaging the existing bin will be very challenging. So some of the bins, those are damaged, we have to send them to a recycling facility or somewhere. But some of the relatively newer bin, some of the residents, they want to keep them. So we didn't come up with any decision at this moment that whether we should let the residents to keep them, or if they don't want, then we can bring them. And if there are certain good number that those are in good operating condition, then maybe we'll be trying to resell them to some of those other communities. If there is no market, then we have to just recycle them.
Thank you very much, sir. Councillor Hawes.
Yes, I'd like to move the committee recommend council select type A bin with the Duralatch locking, or the Duralatch. I'll just put it, I don't know what it is.
Sorry,
yes.
Sorry, that will be then your type D, please.
Sorry, type D. Oh, I'm sorry, I was going off of, oh, pardon me.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, type D, pardon me. Yes. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I'd like to go with type D. I'm gonna go back to the motion here. Type D bin for solid waste collection within the town of Hinton, and direct administration to proceed with implementation of the modernized waste collection program. If I may speak to it, I appreciate, I know that the intent was to bring back some options, as Mayor Michaels had brought up in previous meetings. We've got some different options here. I think that cost effective wise, with the budget at 200 and what was it, originally $255,000 now, increasing it to an extra $15,000 to put the Duralatch system on, I think is reasonable. I think that it'll solve some of the issues, especially that lid being like a sail, as Councillor Sashik referenced there, and it will solve the problem of tipping over. So I think that it's both, again, cost efficient and and efficient too for tipping over. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only concern with this actually is it's a new product and it sounds like a great product. My concern is a full implementation of a product that hasn't been widely tested. We haven't had our hands on one. We haven't installed one. So I wonder if a direction that includes some sort of saging, whether it's, one batch of bins or one batch of latches, so that administration, again, has the opportunity to look at, because if we give this direction tonight, the town is switching to those. And I wonder if a more staged approach may save administration a little bit of time in the end. I'm pretty confident that if there were issues with them, administration would recognize those and bring those forward to us. But if it's after we've purchased 4,000 of them, it could provide more challenges. So if we just order the 624, retrofit we got, see how they work, we may save ourselves some time in the end, because these haven't been widely tested yet. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to speak to Councillor Nelson's comments because they're direct to what I was going to propose. Understanding your concerns and sharing them as well. I still feel that going with the Type B toter regular with Duralatch is the option to go with, considering the concerns. And that's only because the other options are prohibitively expensive. They are far, far and above the additional cost of the Duralatch system. So that's why I'd like to support the motion as proposed, but I would also like to request Councillor Hawes's discretion for a friendly amendment. So what I would like to add, and we can wordsmith in a bit, but it's something to the effect regarding and retrofit existing type A toter regular bins with the Duralach system.
Absolutely. If I may, I totally, yeah, I assumed it would be part of it, but I think it's definitely important to add that. So I totally accept that friendly amendment. Thank you, Councillor Stashik, for adding that.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. If we could see the motion.
Yes, I'm just finishing it up.
Yep, no problem.
While we're waiting, do you mind if Mr. Mayor speaks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Hawk, you had said that you're waiting for one of the Duralach to come in, that it's been ordered to look at. Do you have a timeline or at least a date that they said that it would be shipped by?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through the chair. Actually, I spoke to the sales representative this morning. Actually, he called me and left a voice message that is already being delivered. Please check whether you received it or not and call me back. And we checked, it was not delivered. But I told them that my council meeting is on 25th. It must have to arrive before 25th. So maybe it will arrive tomorrow.
So
just going back to Councillor Nelson's comment, and actually we had that plan that before we order the bulk, we will buy the 624 additional latch. We will implement them in the pilot area, and depending on the success, we will go for it. If council, choose to approve, go for with that option.
So if I may, we used to practice, and I understand it's picking and choosing. I feel this falls in the category, why don't we direct to bring this to regular for decision in a week from now? We did it for so many things. We're making a huge financial purchase without it testing. And Mr. Hogg just said that he said it must be here before the 25th. It's not here. We don't know how many we can do per hour. There's still a few elements missing or information. Why rush this more than a week and go against actually what we've been practicing for quite a while is any financial purchases will be done at regular. So in order, and I think it alludes to a lot of the comments tonight. So those are my thoughts that if there's any direction that will solidify a decision today, I won't support that. I think bringing this to regular for decision in 7 days is probably in our best interest. Thanks.
Emily?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was every intention of bringing this forward to, because it's a financial decision. The previous report was accepted for information. This report, there is a decision to move forward with the bin type, and that is a financial decision. So this was intended to come next week. And I was going to offer the same thing that perhaps prior to the council meeting, we can have the Duralach installed to one of our sample bins for council to have a look at, just for your own peace of mind.
Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say I appreciate Mayor Michael's comments very much. That was kind of my understanding based on the wording of it, though, that committee recommend council select. I was assuming that council would select the type D bin at a regular council meeting. So, but thank you for that clarification because it is helpful. Thank you.
So, Mr. Hawk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, that was the intent to clarify that this motion actually is, committee is recommending council to approve type D. This is not a decision that council is making or committee is making today, and we are not coming back. So we'll go back to regular council based on this direction. Okay. And the other thing, I'd like to thank Mayor and council to push us back on and do further research on the bin types. As a result of the research, actually, we found the additional locking mechanism and all of these. So I think it was an excellent pushback that we take that as an opportunity to further improve the entire system. Thank you for that.
Can I speak just a little to this? Yeah. So just so everybody understands, the truck that we have currently that we've modified, it's a very crude version of what we're going to be going to, right? So this isn't really a fair assumption, I guess, to look at this truck and say, well, it dumps really good with this latch, because it's not. If you look at this particular truck, like if we just pull up to a bin, we let it idle without, revving it up, it takes a minute and 45 seconds to dump the bin, right? And so when it hits the top, the angle's not quite as far as it would be on the new truck and things like that. And it doesn't have that bang as it hits the top. So what we've kind of seen through trial here now is that there's some bins that are, having stuff stuck in the bottom once in a while, depending on how it's packed up or whatever, right? So just so we understand that we might put this latch on these bins with this particular truck, and it might not 100% be a fair, example of what this should do, right? Mm-hmm. So normally we could say with this auto can, you're gonna see that thing, it picks up that bin, bang, right? But it actually hits a little bit, so you're gonna see that latch open easier. So just so you know, we're gonna try to make a, I guess, opinion on that would be something you guys would have to look at.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, should there be any reference to this going to regular in that motion?
It is.
CEO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As stated, there's every intention to bring this forward, as committee is recommending that council select this bin. So it will be brought forward next week, pending the vote, I suppose, for approval from council.
So we would automatically go, if it's approved, on the agenda for regular.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Mr. Mayor?
If I may, Madam Chair, I personally expressed my thoughts. I don't like this new approach because we have to decipher a financial decision, whether it's operational within a current budget. So some things we approve this way don't come to regular. So I dislike this wholeheartedly because we have to define it. This is happening to come to council to regular, but some decisions we made in the past worded like this don't come. And it just creates a gray area in my mind, because sometimes people aren't aware of the financial impact that's not pre-approved through budget. If it's pre-approved through budget, you can give direction and not go to regular. If it's new money spent, then if it's done at standing, it has to go to regular. It's just murky. So, I mean, the fact that it's stated that it's coming to regular, great. I can support this. But just a word of caution, I believe that we're still in an area where we're not all on the same page when it comes to giving direction at standing committee and what comes to regular or not. So just pointing that out again. But that's the will of council on how they want to choose to make their directions worded at council. Thanks.
CEO Olson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the mayor's comments on this. Generally, if it's an information report that comes to standing committee and it's just accepted for information, that isn't something that comes forward to regular council for another vote or for another look. I do understand that there are some areas even within the action pending list that are examples perhaps of that. That's something to pay attention to, and I appreciate the question being asked tonight just to verify. And in the future, if council's ever wondering or if we're unclear, to please pose those questions to us. We're also in the final stages of hiring a legislative person, and once we have that support back, consistent support around the council table, I think we'll see solidifying of those processes, but I appreciate the comment.
So,
Madam Chair, I believe I was in the queue.
yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Sorry, and it's I guess maybe have been already discussed, but one thing I did want to ask administration and Mr. Hawk, I guess particularly, but because it's back to the conversation about do we want to install them with without testing them or something, but I'm guessing that there's some sort of guarantee, some sort of, if these things don't work in the future, that the company would be able to, because I think, wasn't there some kind of guarantee on the bins themselves? But I'm just curious as to moving forward, if, we were to order them all and decide, oh, these aren't working very well, so.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair to Councillor first. Yes, as I mentioned here, that the bin itself, there are warranties.
Right.
All, different types of bins have different warranty. Most of them 12 years and 10 years, except one, the most costlier one has only 5 years warranty. But for the dual latch itself, it's a metal. I don't see that but asking them how many years of warranty they have on the latch, no, we don't have that information handy with us.
Right, I guess I'm not saying warranty, but if they're somehow not, supplying what they're supposed to do, the lids are starting to flop up, things like that, like they aren't holding them down. Is there some kind of recourse in the future potentially?
And thank you for asking that, and for sure, we will include them in our purchase agreement with them.
Okay, thank you.
And if any latch lose their functionality, of course, they have to replace. So we will include them in the purchase agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Thank you, Mr. Hawk. I don't want to belabor this, but I just want to ask Mr. Mayor, is there anything with this motion like a second amendment to it or mention of regular council that would make you more comfortable? I just don't understand.
No, I'm perfectly comfortable with this. I just pointed out that there are, an example is there was a direction request made prior to it for the routes that somebody might think it comes to regular, right? But it doesn't, that won't come to regular. And there's just other examples. I was just pointing out that it wasn't worded in there and we weren't sure because it was already pre-budgeted money. So just to clarify, but I'm comfortable with the discussion. I know this is coming to council on the 1st, so I'm totally comfortable with things.
Okay, good. All righty. So is there any more discussion on this before I call to question? Councillor Stashik's friendly amendment that committee recommend council select type D bin for solid waste collection within the town of Hinton and direct administration to proceed with implementation of the modernized waste collection program and retrofit existing type A toter bins with the Duralatch locking system. All those in favor? And that is carried. Wendy?
Was that unanimous?
Yes. Councillor Haas?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And if this isn't the time to bring this up, but it is around bins. And if it isn't and it needs to be another conversation, please, administration, just let me know. But it was brought to the attention in all this discussion with bins to council. A letter was sent to us by one of the business owners that use commercial, and that their bin is being used by illegal dumping. We heard a lot about potentially illegal dumping in the residential areas, but don't really hear much about the commercial areas, and it was brought to the attention through a letter. And I guess, and like I said, if it's not the right place and there needs to be another conversation on an agenda, it's fine. But I'm just curious as to the potential of having locked bins for some of our commercial users where they lock their bins, open it up when they use it, and then have on the day of which they are going to be emptied, their responsibility is to open them up. And of course, if they aren't opened, they won't be emptied. But I'm just wondering, because I see them renting these bins. It's their renting property, right? And being basically stolen by other people and then being charged for it, and I guess looking at different bins and everything, is that, and like I said, if it's a different conversation, totally for it. Is that possible? 2, is it possible, if that's not possible, is it possible like those garbage bins that take cardboard where they have a small, kind of place where they put their garbage in, whereas the big ones are locked, where they could then put their garbage in and still have access and it locks it. Is that possible? The question is to
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Chair to Councillor Haas. Yes, as in the future year, we will be replacing the commercial bin as well.
Okay.
And as you mentioned, that those bins will be looking for the option of locking. So each and every commercial who will be having those bins, the locking mechanism or the key will be with them. Whenever they want to, dump the garbage, and on the pickup day, they have to make sure that it's unlocked so that, our operator can go and empty them. This is possible.
And Madam Chair, if I may, please.
Yes, sir.
I guess my concern is in the middle of that, right? Before we look at that. I'm just throwing it out there. And like I said, we can change this, we can go off this topic and have this conversation another time, or it can be a matter in which but I just think it's important that we consider those, especially the small businesses that maybe potentially don't need that but that's all they're using, but then half their garbage might be, and they're also confronting some of these people as well, which is not safe for them as well. So it's just something to consider. And I thought of it when we were talking about the bins and the locking and everything. So, and I'm just worried about the in-between part. So.
And Councillor House, actually, we will be looking in between, as you mentioned, in between, if we can introduce any locking, the only thing that there will be lots of work related to that and some expense. And when we know, maybe next year we will be replacing some of them. So for a few months, I don't know. However, in the future, once we complete modernization of our bins and the entire system, there will be minimum to almost no opportunity for illegal dumping. So those people who creating those additional garbage, they have to purchase bins or they have to make arrangement with the town and pay for their service. So we are going to that route.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Manager. I was just hoping we could move along. I'm not prepared to have a commercial waste collection discussion at this time. We've made a motion to move forward with modernizing, and that was something that was coming back to us as administration was ready. And I'm not that concerned about a solution for 6 months. We've had the same bins for years and years and years. So I'd prefer if we just moved along until we could have an educated conversation about it. Thank you.
And thank you, sir. And I apologize. I should have kept this on track. So, and Councillor Ostashak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Same thoughts as Councillor Nelson. Thank you.
So is there any further discussion from council before I call to question? And seeing none. Okay.
My apologies, I should have just had it add the last part and I put the whole thing.
Yeah.
So we have to go back to the original.
It was a friendly.
It was
just a friendly.
Yeah, and I did that wrong, so my apologies.
So when do I still do this one then? Yeah. Okay, so the committee recommend council select type D bin for solid waste.
Sorry, Madam Chair. I don't think that it's necessary to call it to question.
Okay. I'll just take it from here.
So we're good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so our next action item is number 6, and that's our bylaw community peace officer. I would like to propose a little break right now. So how about 7 minutes? Good? Good. Thank you, everyone. We're going to resume our standing committee meeting. Next action item is number 6, bylaw and community peace officer high-level service review, and our CAO Emily Olson will be presenting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In July, Council requested a report discussing the service levels and financial impacts of the Bylaw Services Department be brought to a standing committee meeting in August. Through this discussion, Council directed that the 3rd CPO position be held pending a decision through the 2021 budget process. Council also directed that a report be brought back to support a high-level service discussion regarding these positions to an August standing committee meeting. In the report, service levels are discussed through structure and the role of the CPO position, as well as service level demands and changes to accommodate a reduction to 2 CPO positions from 3. The service level reduction, as indicated in the report, is achieved through revised hours and a reduction in proactive policing of residential patrols, moving further toward a complaint-based model. School zone patrols are planned to continue with the start of the school year, so there's an exception there. As well, some collaborative partnerships and positive community programs may need to be reviewed, reduced, or eliminated as well, depending on the capacity there. Over the last 2 months, there are some challenges that have arisen that are detailed in the report that have come about due to sick time or vacation taken by our current CPOs, which has reduced the person power on shift to 1 CPO and in one case, no CPOs on duty. In that case, calls were transferred to the RCMP for follow-up, or were followed up by the CPOs once they were back in the office. The number of files per week that, despite some of these changes to reduce service level, files per week are not immediately dealt with, and per week approximately that's amounted to about 15. Complaints have also been received on the change in service, and requests for proactive patrols to manage things like excessive speed or parking issues in neighborhoods have not been met. There are not many areas within the service level that can be adjusted from the changes that we've already implemented, which is why this is coming forward as an information item to council. It may also take time for the community to adjust to these changes through additional communications and expectation management. So for this reason, it's coming forward as an information report, and the discussion around the change in service level, as well as a discussion through budget 2021 are planned. Chief Martins is here as well, and we're both happy to answer any questions or provide further information to support council on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor, do you have any questions? Councillor Haas.
Just to clarify tonight, and the goal of tonight was to give us an overview of it. And I have some questions, but they're more related, if I may, to, because I know we're not discussing whether or not it's 2 or 3 this evening, but in the future, these are, when it comes to budget time, that could be part of that discussion. So I have some kind of high level questions moving into it based on some of the things that were talked about in this report. And one of them is on the service level complaints. I guess I'm just curious moving forward, and we get complaints on ATE through the quarterly reports that we get. And I'm just wondering, moving into the budget time, if it's possible to administration to give us a look at what those complaints, how many complaints were received since going from 2 to 3, and and looking at it, or going from 3 to 2, sorry, the nature of them and things like that, going into the budget discussions, because I realize that budget, of course, is money, but sometimes we're looking at service levels and things like that, and if we're getting a lot of complaints, and so I guess my question to administration, is that achievable? Is that possible?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to paraphrase, looking for additional information through that budget discussion, or to pose those questions to administration tonight?
Not tonight, but to think, like, can we track moving forward, since going from 3 to 2, and looking at looking at having in the budget discussion, but what kind of, how many complaints have we received due to the change in services? Maybe you can speak to that tonight already, but there's no numbers in here, or even what they're about, just to see, because there's some things alluded to, for example, going to potentially what's it called? Sorry, pardon me. Complaint-based, right? And the residents I've spoke to do not want the complaint-based type of program. They don't want to be calling every time on it. They want patrols done. They want things. They don't want a service that's just complaint-based. So if we're having concerns of the complaint-based, for example, and things like that, that a 2-person potentially couldn't achieve, where a 3-person would. But I guess I'm just looking at what kind of level of complaints. Are we getting 5 or are we getting 50? I guess that's what I'm looking at.
I will defer to Chief Martins. He'll have a better idea of how many we're receiving and on what topics.
Madam Chair, and through to Councillor Hawes. So since I'd say the end of June, like the report says, there's about 15 calls for service per week that have been going unanswered. But we're seeing an average about 5 complaints a week, some in the evenings and a few on the weekends, where we have citizens complaining that we used to provide this service. Why aren't we now? RCMP don't show up in time. So we have those numbers. Like I said, off the top of my head, we're right around 5 a week. You know, no one can come out and deal with anything on the weekend, as well as past 8 in the evening. So we have those numbers. We just didn't provide this. We were looking at hopefully having that discussion further down the road in budget when we would be discussing the third position again.
If I may.
Yes.
My intent is not, like, that's good to know, but I wasn't looking for, you know, tonight, but to look at into the future, you know, information potentially for that budget discussion, to get an idea, because that's a big part of, for me anyway, I don't know about the rest of council, but, you know, and maybe that's where it's a direction is needed, but to give a sense, because sometimes people aren't speaking up about it, but through complaint, they are, so.
Thank you, Fire Chief. CAO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the comments as well tonight. Through administration, we're seeking a bit of clarification on that next discussion,
Okay.
so that we can prepare and provide the kind of analysis or information that would help council through that decision making. Or if there's any additional, I guess, metrics or things like that through the next several months that we can be paying attention to. So I'll leave that.
Thank you. Councillor Stashek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions, just a couple of comments, I guess. Wanted to express my appreciation to administration for providing us with this report to kind of give us a heads up of what our community's going to look like moving forward over the next several months with 2 community peace officers, and by extension the public too, so that you know, there's some awareness ahead of time of what we can expect to see moving forward. And I think this is actually a good opportunity. This could be somewhat treated as a bit of a pilot project to see what our community looks like with 2 CPOs on a permanent full-time basis. And I think it's going to give a lot of good relevant background information to council during the 2021 budget discussions. If the 3rd CPO position again comes back to us as a highly prioritized item in the budget, that council's going to have some real world information and perspective that they can use to make that judgment with. And I think that's a positive thing. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, this report to me gives me the tools to go out to citizens and say, do you know that this is what our CPOs are doing? Do you know, and really help flavor the budget conversation. As far as where we want to go with this position, to me, it's going to be, once we see where we're at as an overall budget, this is a very unique year with all of the different changes due to COVID. So, you know, it's really, the only way to say it's not a budgetary concern is if it's something that's cost neutral. And to me, a cost neutral CPO is probably one that, you know, operates almost by bounty, and I don't want to go down that path either. So really, it's going to be how this fits in with the overall budget number. And I'm just happy to have information at my fingertips to have those conversations that I didn't have 5 days ago. So thanks for bringing this forward. It's a piece of the puzzle that we've been missing to have great conversations with citizens. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, I appreciate that part too, because citizens, I think having this overview, quite frankly, a lot of citizens don't know what CPOs do. And I think, again, in our past, having kind of a layout and having this tonight, you know, is to give a kind of a job description definitely of the CPOs and the amount of things that they are responsible for in our community. And they're not just, if I may, like dog catchers, because that's what I hear a lot in regards to it. So it is definitely, you know, something that we can use to have those conversations for sure. And I'll leave it at that, and then leave it up to other councillors. I may have other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question to administration is, and I'll echo what many councillors have already said, that this is some good, very good information. What percentage, or do we have an idea of what that number would be of calls that you get? So 2,090 as of July 1st. how many of those calls are misdirected, meaning they're not calls that should be going to bylaw, things of that nature? And I'll preface it with, my thought is, obviously, when we're going to be looking at the overall budget and our service level, we're going to have to look at efficiencies or other ways. And one thought in my mind is, do we have the most ideal automated service? Do we have a Hinton listens type of approach to this? Like, there's going to be all kinds of ways to address certain issues. So back to my original question, do we know if there's a loss of efficiency on calls that are going to the wrong department by law? And if so, how many calls are we talking about that sort of get redirected somewhere else? Sorry, Ms. Olson.
I would defer to Chief Martins if he has that information.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through to Mayor Michaels. I guess I need a little more clarification from you on what type of call you're talking about. So when a call comes in to our department, if it can be handled internally, then that call would be handled with our Protective Services Coordinator administratively. If it's something that needs to send a peace officer out to deal with that, then obviously it goes out, it's pushed to the peace officer's vehicle when they're patrolling in the community. They respond to that complaint when they're out patrolling. When we don't have any administrative support Monday to Friday, it goes to our provider, Yellowhead County, who then answers, takes the call. If it's an emergency, they notify the on-duty CPO or on standby CPO, and then obviously they call me for approved overtime. If currently those calls now are being stacked, and then the CPO will be dealing with them the next day, or if it's a Friday evening, if it's over the weekend, they'll be following up with all those calls on a Monday. So as far as fielding different types of bylaws, they are all coming in and they're properly dispersed through our Protective Service Coordinator to the CPO. So unless, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Fire Chief. Thank you, Mr. Merrick. Councillor Haas.
Sorry, am I next in queue?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know if it was. A question about hours, because what I'm hearing is some of those complaints are weekends and evenings. So what, I mean, when you look at it, I realize every weekend's a little bit different and it's hard to, but are there more calls during the weekend and the evenings? Is potentially looking at adjusting hours accordingly to try, would less days, hours during the days, time hours, and more into the evenings and weekends? Like, is that a possibility to try and achieve, you know, some of the residents' concerns? You know, because I know that we've gone to Monday to Friday without weekends, but can we accommodate somehow the weekends with the man or the person power we have right now?
Madam Chair, and through Councillor Haas. We have looked at numerous shifts over the last 5 years, actually, when we currently been at 2. The challenge is, again, with the 2 and splitting them up, it doesn't meet all of our target complaints from citizens. So if we split up into one that's just working Monday to Friday, you know, like that, let's say 7:30 till 3:30, then there's no one on after 3:30. So we'd have even more of complaints come in from 3:30 till that through that evening. And so what we've seen is a lot of the complaints that we're receiving hopefully can be taken care of in the evening. That's when we're seeing people at home. And so for some of the things that the peace officers have to do as per legislation, they have to do in pairs. And same thing with some of the stuff on the weekend. We're finding it easier when we had the 3rd to go on the weekend and make that contact and follow up on some of those files. But right now with 2, this seems the most feasible for the hours and with the complaints that we're currently seeing from our community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Fire Chief. Thank you, Councillor Haas. Council, do we have any more discussion on this? Councillor Ostashik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move that committee accept the bylaw and community peace officer high-level service review report for information.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion on that? And Councillor Haas.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of this. I look forward to, if we've come to budget, having a future conversation about this service and level of services and things like that. I guess, because one of the things that comes to mind personally, information, but, when it comes to bylaws and stuff, if we go to a service of 2 or whatever, if we look at our complaint base, I think we have to consider as a council and in future councils as to bylaws and prioritizing, because the more bylaws you have, the more then service potential you need and things like that. So we have to make sure, because for example, we're having a discussion potentially of having a bylaw about masks coming up. I personally would like to see it sometimes with feeding of animals, but if we have to really think about that moving forward. So I'm looking forward to having more of this information come forward during our budget talks and looking at the service levels and in those discussions then. So, but I'm definitely in favor of supporting the information for tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. So we do have a direction on the floor. And before I call the question, any more discussion? And nothing? Call the question that committee accept the bylaw and community peace officer high-level service review report for information. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Fire Chief. All right, we're going to be moving on to our discussion item, and it's on the COVID-19 use of masks in public places. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you said earlier in the meeting tonight, Madam Chair, unfortunately, Councillor Magoon wasn't able to join us this evening due to some extenuating circumstances. I believe this is an item that was initiated by Councillor Magoon and was placed on the agenda at his request. I'm very interested to hear Councillor Magoon's thoughts on why he felt this was a pertinent item to bring to the discussion table at this point. And for those reasons, I'd like to move to table this discussion item to the September 8th Standing Committee meeting.
So would that require a direction?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Would you want to give that direction right now, sir?
Yeah, I just
did.
did.
Oh, you did? Sorry.
Yeah, I moved.
I guess, I'm sorry.
I moved to table.
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure. Whatever you, I'm amenable to rewording. Postpone, is that correct?
That was 2 different.
So postpone to the September 8th Standing Committee meeting.
Councillor Haas.
Yeah, I'd be definitely in agreement of that. And I know that some of the citizens were expecting to have that conversation this evening. But I too, I have my own thoughts on it and hearing from the citizens on it, but it was Councillor Levine that did bring it to the attention of the council and add it to the agenda. So I think, having his input and some of the background of why he brought it to would be helpful to spur the conversation. Maybe he's had conversations with people, so I would be in favor of postponing it until that next standing committee. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Nelson.
I'll be speaking against this direction. Publicly, it was acknowledged by multiple members of council, including the mayor, during one of the updates that we were going to be having this conversation on the 18th. Subsequently, it was requested that it get deferred to today. So general public is expecting us to have this conversation. And I agree, in an ideal situation, Councillor Magoon would be here as he was the one who originally brought it. But he brought it on behalf of citizens, not on behalf of Councillor Magoon. I think we need to at some point actually have this discussion because we've been promising to citizens that we would be having this discussion. Citizens have tuned in tonight because we've been having this discussion. So to continue to delay it, I just don't think is what is correct. At least from what my citizens have expected from me. We've had a lot of people who've been asking, when are you guys having this discussion? And the date's already changed and postponed. And to me, you know, we've all put some work into figuring this out, talking to citizens. Waiting another 2 weeks to have a discussion that is potentially already overdue. You know, especially looking at municipal comparators, I'd rather have at least some of this discussion tonight. Nothing formal is going to come out of it. Potentially direction to bring to regular council or direction to prepare, but likely Councillor Magoon will be able to flavor this conversation even in more detail if we make some progress tonight at least. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And Councillor Stashik.
Yeah, if I could speak to a motion briefly, Madam Chair. To my knowledge, there's nothing that's come forward recently that's made this an item of priority. There hasn't been a spike in local COVID numbers. There hasn't been any recommendation from any other level of government for municipalities to consider mandatory masking. And I don't see any harm in delaying the conversation, at least the initial conversation, until Councillor Magoon can be a part of it, as it was done on his initiation. And I would like to see him be a part of that conversation before there's any potential direction of council to have this come back as an agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would you like to respond to that, sir? Okay. Do you want me to put you on the list?
Yes, please.
I'm next. So my concern is if we delay this till September 8th, we have no assurances that Councillor Magoon can make that meeting. We don't know. Councillor Magoon has not reached out to me or any of council that I know with his desire not to have that discussion tonight. Those are two concerns I have. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, I think a lot of the citizens that I've spoken to are just looking for some sort of idea where things are going. We're entering a new point with all of this because school is starting, and school starting is creating a whole level of uncertainty for a pretty big swath of the population. And whether we go down the path of a mask bylaw or no mask bylaw, I think some indication of which way we're going will help citizens understand one of the 75 moving targets they have right now, and whether or not they need to start considering, whether it's going to school, whether it's a business, start considering what their next steps look like and how to respond to what school may bring. I think that's the one variable that does exist now, and I know there hasn't been a spike in cases or different medical recommendations, but school is a pretty big variable. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, sir. And Councillor Wah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to be against postponing for some of the same reasons that Councillor Nelson said. I think there's no harm in having us start the discussion at the very least. It doesn't mean we got to kick the can too far down the road, but I think we do need to, I do think the public is expecting us to start the conversation. So I don't know what that would mean for tonight, whether it's just something as simple as getting administration to compile some information about what other communities have already undertaken, whether they were for or against, because I know that there have been communities on both sides, but start building some information so we could have an informed discussion next time it's before us. Anyway, so that's why I'd be against postponing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so we do have a direction on the floor. Is there any more discussion happening before I call to question? Councillor Stashik has made a direction to postpone the COVID-19 use of masks in public spaces discussion until the September 8th, 2020 Standing Committee meeting. All those in favor and opposed? It has been defeated. And Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question to administration is, what would be the turnaround in order to compile some information, as Councillor Waugh alluded to? And I'll even extend my question to even having a potential, and I use that word very loosely, but a potential bylaw. Any administrative input on the timing? And I do want to preface this, that I do agree with some of the comments that I think we're in a good position today. There's no immediate need to make a decision for our community today by any means. So any insight on information and potential draft bylaws for council to look at?
Thank you through to Mayor Michaels. Administration has proactively been looking at what other communities have been doing, and I think at this stage in the game have a good idea of the differences in between the bylaws that are being passed or being brought forward. This is something that both Chief Martins and the bylaw services area has been looking at, as well as our own health and safety, to determine what might be possible or what could be included in a draft bylaw to council. So this has been looked at already, anticipating the decision or discussion coming to council at a certain point. So I will maybe ask Fire Chief Martins if he wants to weigh in as well. Chief Martins isn't available at the meeting on September 8th, and his area has been doing a lot of the research on potential bylaws to bring forward. So I'll defer to him.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through the council. So I echo what CAO Olson said there, and I just would like to let you know that we have looked at Banff, Jasper, Edson, Edmonton, Calgary, and most recently Lethbridge, just approved last night. And basically, all the bylaws that have been passed are very similar as far as what exemptions for the not wearing mask, whether it's health or under the age of 2, and there's a few others. Calgary was a little different, whereas they had fines in there for signage for the businesses to post, whereas the other communities didn't make it fines with postage signing. And the reason they did a lot of that was because of people coming from other communities. Then it wasn't guessing which communities are doing and which aren't. It's signed on all your businesses. So that's some of the thought behind that. The only one that did a trigger kind of based bylaw was Edson. And that was based on low risk, medium, and high risk through their bylaw. Basically, low risk is, as you see it now, keep your distance, wash your hands, use hand sanitizer. The medium risk is if numbers were above 10, and then there's about 4 or 5 other criteria. So if they see cases spike in communities around Edson, or if they see a high cases spike in schools, it triggers the mask bylaw. And then there's also a time frame where there are no active cases and the bylaw would be rescinded. So there are some differences between the communities. Jasper and Edson Jasper and Banff were a little more to certain areas or streets, but for the most part, we could probably cut and paste and then put options for council, whether they want business to sign, if we wanted certain streets only, or public places. So it could be done pretty quickly to turn around for council. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor House?
Yeah, I got a question about with your research in regards to those low, medium, and high risk and the numbers. What's that based on, if I may, to Mr. Martins, Chief Martins, so Edson, for example, putting it at 10. And the reason the reason for my question is I had a conversation with a few people in our community and felt that 10, if we have 10 active cases, we're in a really, could be in trouble, basically, is the words that they use. So I guess I'm curious as to what evidence or how did they base that on?
So that question was asked, and I didn't really get a solid answer on it. So I can't provide anything else to you.
Okay, I appreciate that because I just was curious, because I mean we talk a lot about research and we're getting people sending, but what is that? And I'd be curious if and when moving forward that our group has that conversation, including health and all the other people, as to have that conversation and input as to what would be, if that's the will of council, if that where we were to go, what is that number, when we, initiate that bylaw. So that was, because that's one of my, I guess, concerns in regards to that and the complexities of it. You have 10 and now we have 9, so what does that mean? We're no more masks and then we get one more case and we're back. Like it's just, there'd have to be some definite definitions going on there too. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, I think whether it's tonight or the next conversation, I think there's just a few key decisions that council has in front of us. It's, as we are right now, do we have an interest in a mask bylaw? Kind of yes or no. And if it's no, then it's, do we set a date for the next discussion? Do we do nothing? Or do we have some sort of trigger for next discussion, whether it's case? And if we say yes, then do we just say direct admin to develop a draft bylaw based on best practices? Or do we set some of the parameters, which is triggers, exemptions, how we're going to enforce it, whether it's going to be more educational or more, and if council's prepared tonight, like I think we could get, partway down to give administration a bit of direction if we are looking to go that way, or if this is something we just kind of put behind and revisit it a standing committee in whenever, or when there are active cases again, or whatever. I'm concerned that we could get into a really long sort of just chat about things without actually moving forward some business and making some progress. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to administration, I guess my question is, I appreciate the research that went into looking at some bylaws that other communities have implemented, but I'm just wondering, was there any research done into the circumstances and reasoning for those committees enacting those bylaws? And then conversely, other communities that have had this discussion and chosen not to enact bylaws, has there been any research into the circumstances and reasoning for their choosing not to?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Councillor Stashik. So some of the communities that I contacted, Banff, Jasper, when we spoke, was obviously about the tourism and the number of people coming into their community was one of their big concerns, travel related. And some of the other communities, when we spoke to them, it was, again, the size of their city, being proactive. Edmonton and Calgary, bigger centers, they've had a lot of cases. A lot of people are out and about. So there was some of that discussion that we had. To go into a lot of more detail with some of your questions, we'd have to ask still some more detailed questions to different communities.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Based on, I guess, listening to administration and council, and Councillor Waugh's comment struck me, and I alluded to it earlier, and I think maybe this is our path forward, is do we get an information item? Do we direct administration to come back with the communities that are doing it, the communities that are not doing it, and their reasons why, and there are some on both sides, and get that information on the pros and cons of that, and a little bit more information, because I'm obviously not a medical expert. I go to different sources online to try to listen to things about more specifics on any positive or negative impacts of masks. And I think if we have a bit more framed conversation on September 8th with an information item, not something, at least I'm not prepared to say, yeah, we need a draft bylaw yet. I wanted the information to know, do we really have to go down this road? Because as of today, I think we are in a very good position. One, we have no active cases. Two, we have an administration and a trigger of the EOC that could immediately happen to deal with things of this nature, like we did on April 2nd when we triggered a local state of emergency. So if things did go poorly, our administration is already on top of this. So when I weigh everything, I look at us being in a very positive position. We're not Calgary, we're not Edmonton, even Red Deer, things of that nature. So let's get a bit more information for the 8th so we can have, and for me, I would prefer an information item on pros and cons and maybe going a little bit further. And let's have a better conversation on the 8th and see if, where do we want to go as a council? And in the meantime, we are protected, hypothetically. And I don't want to strike fear or propaganda or things of that nature, but we have to talk about these things. That is, if there was a surge, we have our administration working with the EOC. We can call a local state of emergency. We can do other things to make sure. So I want to communicate to the public that we're not just going to blindly not do anything for 2 weeks. We are prepared and okay to strike or move forward if something happens. But today we are in a great position. Let's stay even keel, get info, reconvene in 14 days and see where we are as a community. And if we have to intervene, so be it. That's the nature of government. But today I don't see the need to intervene quickly in saying we need a mass bylaw or even see a draft one. Because administration alluded to, they're all very similar. It would be easy to turn around. So I'm happy we continue this conversation today. We have a pulse about what we want, but I would prefer an information item come to us on September 8th. Thanks.
You're welcome. I have a question for administration for either CAO or Mr. Martins. If we saw community transmission starting to happen, could you do a state of local emergency and mandate masks?
To Madam Chair, through a state of local emergency, that does give us extraordinary powers to do what's necessary for the protection of the community. So in that sense, yes. To answer your question, if that was needed, we could move swiftly, as the mayor spoke to.
Good, thank you.
Oh, I have thank you, Madam Chair. I do have something to add. I've just been conferring with admin a little bit here. I'm not sure that it is achievable to bring even that information report for September 8th. Fire Chief Martins, and between him and myself, there's holidays and things like that, and our deadline for our reports to come forward typically is 2 weeks before the date of the meeting, just to give enough time to create the information, create the report and whatnot, and then as well as for administration to vet it, to take a look and make sure that it's meeting our level before bringing it forward to council. So I don't know that that is achievable to bring something forward for September 8th. If this is a priority of council, we can look at other resources to make that happen. But just wanted to let council know that Chief Martins won't be here on the 8th, and it may be difficult to pull it together within that time frame. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'll also wait what the rest of council says. I think it's all about expectation, and I do agree that the turnaround is tight, but that's only if the expectations are high. I think there was even some appetite, even though I voted against Councillor Stashik's motion to postpone this to the 8th. We're more ahead today than we would have been by just postponing it, and I could have supported that to some extent, but I did want to push the conversation a bit further. So I know it goes against a bit of what our CAO just said, but if we get a high level information report with the expectation knowing that it is a quick turnaround, it will still better us, even with the fire chief not here, to have a conversation and to share with us even further with the community, because the community is listening. More people have messaged me, and I think other people or other councillors compared to other topics. This has been a big one. So I'd like to continue this on the 8th with tempered expectations, knowing that we may not do much that day, but at least we're in a situation where we can do another potential small step, or at least take a position and say, perhaps with 2 weeks of consultation, new information coming from the provincial government that comes out daily, and that might change when schools come back into effect. We might be in a position to take a further stance. So to wait 4 weeks from now and potentially even further, I'm not overly comfortable. I'd like to, whether it's a bylaw or no bylaw, to have a better communication to our public in 2 weeks from now. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, I'd just like to bring up too, I realize, you know, both here, Mayor Michaels is saying, but also administration, but I mean, we do have the 22nd and the 29th as well available to us. Typically, we would be at AUMA and traveling there. We're not this year. We've only got 3 meetings scheduled for the month of September, but there are 2 Tuesdays that are open potentially to have maybe another standing committee again. So, because we have just one standing, adding another standing potentially to September, to have, you know, maybe giving the administration a little more time and, you know, then having that discussion. But I'm just throwing it out there that, you know, things are different this year, so.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Oh,
I think.
Oh, sorry. CAO?
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to kind of follow up on some of the comments that have been made with those tempered expectations, and just and I apologize for looking at bringing forward a report without having the opportunity to confer with administration to find out what kind of support there is to bring something back within that time frame. Sometimes takes a minute just for us to put our heads together to figure out what's possible. It looks like there would be some additional support that we could tap into with tempered expectations to bring something high level to the 8th. It would be just an overview of what other communities are doing and wouldn't necessarily provide any recommendation or support to council's discussion around what would be included in a bylaw necessarily. So take that for what it is, but if that's the expectation, we can do our best to try and do that.
I may.
Yes, sir.
And thank you for that, CEO Olson. I'm of 2 thoughts. That could work for me too, because I spoke to that earlier, but I am with the same train of thought as Councillor Hawes. Our agendas are getting bigger. We don't have a meeting on the 22nd. I don't want to convolute it more, but if we want a bit more detailed information or that extra week, we could change the regular meeting on the 15th actually to a standing, so we get 2 standings in a row, and the 22nd can be added as a regular. So if any decisions for those 2 standings on the 8th and the 15th come, we can approve them on the 22nd, because then we go another 2 weeks without any meetings because there's none on the 29th. So logistically, I can support both. If we want to do the 8th, we still have the opportunity to add a meeting on the 22nd. If we're not comfortable with the 8th, I would highly recommend the 15th become a standing, get this at a standing, and the 22nd we add a regular in order to officially pass whatever we need on the 8th and the 15th. That would be my train of thought, but I'll listen to council. Thanks.
Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, I think we want to be careful adding meetings. If there's lots of agenda items, there's lots of topics, I'm always fine adding another agenda. But if it's something that we're just looking to delay because we're not really prepared to have the conversation yet, or it's not something we truly want to move in either direction, adding another meeting to chat about it, I don't think is a great use of time and resources, both on, you know, our meeting fees, but also administration's time and preparation. So unless there's a really specific requirement for an additional meeting, which maybe is what we would provide tonight, is you know, if we're going to have it 2 weeks later, then we should have some direction of where we actually want to go with it potentially, not just have a meeting to have another discussion item. It should be action oriented if we're going to invest the resources in having more meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Stashik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So speaking personally, just for my own opinion, I have some significant concerns about sending administration to do research on an item that to me doesn't have full justification at this point. Is a mask bylaw to me, that's a very significant, serious mandate to impose on people who may not be completely comfortable for one reason or another with the idea of being forced to wear masks in public. Without something to justify that, I have a hard time getting behind it, getting to support it. With that said, that's coming from somebody who does wear a mask in public. Whenever I go out, I wear one. I encourage citizens who aren't uncomfortable to certainly wear a mask to protect their fellow citizens. I also encourage any businesses who feel that's in their employees' best interest to have a mask policy in their store to implement one. But at this point, without some kind of recommendation from Alberta Health or Health Canada or something to show that we're at an increased risk of exposure or transmission in our community, I'm leery about sending administration to do research on something to bring us back to potentially consider implementing a bylaw with nothing really to justify it. In addition to that, there are already mechanisms in place where the state and local emergency can be declared, and the EOC can immediately take steps, and not just masks, additional steps too if they're required, closure of public facilities, increased social distancing, or other measures to help limit the exposure, to limit transmission. And masks to me are only a part of that. They're a significant part, but they're still only a part. And if we're gonna talk about this, discuss this, or if there's something that the EOC is going to discuss, I'd prefer that it was done in an all-encompassing way where they're addressing all the different aspects of negating possibility of transmission of COVID. To me, masks is a small part of the big picture, and it places a big imposition on a large part of our population. We heard from a lot of people just at Minute with Council today about how uncomfortable they are with mandated masks for various reasons. So, thank you.
So this is a discussion item. I don't think we don't need a motion on a discussion item.
Well, we don't, like you said, we don't need one.
Yeah.
If no one's willing to make a motion and there's no further discussion, it's at an end and we move on to the next topic.
So, yes, sir.
I think I was in the queue, wasn't I?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to, I also agree with a lot of what Councillor Stashik is saying is we have a population or part of the population that are wearing masks already. It's a personal choice to make someone wear a mask. And I mean, sure, we've seen lots of people sending in to evidence that, why they don't work. And there's evidence out there too that they work, and there's other things too. But I mean, to mandate, to bylaw to wear a mask, I mean, are we going to also bylaw how they're worn, how they're used? Because technically, you touch your mask, it's contaminated, and you should be changing it with another one. Like, there's a lot of things to wearing masks that are not necessarily the proper way of wearing or using them. And I think there are people out there that are going to wear them, that feel comfortable with them. There are others that do not. And I think, I know that there are some health professionals that would argue with me and say, but I think to bylaw that, to mandate it to that it's required in our community, I think, I don't believe it's against human rights. I think that honestly, if the provincial government decided and everything that this was to be masks worn, they would have done it by now. They sure recommend it, but they don't really have any clear evidence whether or not it also fully prevents it as well. Hand hygiene, all of those things as well. So, I don't want to go with some of the research that we've seen because I don't necessarily agree with some of the research that we've seen that's shared with us. But I do believe that, making them mandatory at this point, with having the EOC available to us, we've done a really good job, I think, of the town of Hinton, to be wary of it.
to be, we've put sanctions in place in regards to social distancing when necessary to try to slow it down, and other matters of, closing facilities and things like that. I mean, the only thing that I personally might be willing to is municipal buildings, potentially high traffic areas, maybe where it's hard to do social distance or physical distancing, like our rec center, for example, when it's reopens and there's more traffic in those places. My other concern, if I may, is in the town or city of Edmonton. I was there when there is a bylaw, and when I saw in businesses nobody wearing masks, I approached them like, "What's going on?" And they said, "Well, it's not our store policy." So it's a city bylaw, but we don't enforce it in our store. So which I found interesting, because they have signs up that but it's not required. And so when I asked, they were told by mayor management not to approach anybody or not to enforce it. So I guess I'm just wondering is how, we can make the bylaw state that, but then are we treading on other, thin ice in regards to other ways as well. So I think there's a lot of complexities to this, and I really think that those that are wearing masks will wear them, and then those that don't want them aren't going to anyway. And how are we going to enforce it? Honestly, I just don't know how that's even achievable personally. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Fire Chief Martins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess you said it right at the end there, Councillor Hawes. I guess the concern from my area would be, is it an educational bylaw or is it an enforcement bylaw? Dropping back to the two CPOs will bring challenges to our community. But not only that, we did speak with our lawyer, and we kind of got some direction on the human rights side of things, what stores can and can't enforce. And there's some really good information from that in regards to, all the businesses do have the right to create their own policies for their stores. And if people don't wear their mask, then it's a simple trespass and they're asked to leave. And RCMP or us can be called to deal with that. To speak to the EOC side of things and the local state of emergency, we have a lot of power when we do go to the local state of emergency, even under enforcement side of things. We can get pretty much anybody deemed enforcement to help out in certain areas if we had a major crisis. So there is that ability to, if we did have to go through the EAC committee with all you in the room there and the EOC. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Hawes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, committee.
Were you- you're not-
I think
you were
Oh,
in queue
yes.
somewhere.
Councillor Nelson.
Yeah, I actually have a different view on the EOC's role in this. I agree that the EOC is there and can be activated and has these great powers, but if we think that there's a medium to high likelihood of an EOC being activated, and that one of the things that they would be doing is enacting a mask bylaw, then it's our job to represent citizens to make sure what they will be enacting is what our citizens would want. So if we think, well, it's likely going to happen and EOC can just convene, then we should be developing a bylaw now that can be enacted by either a resolution of council or by the EOC, so that our citizens' views are implemented within that bylaw, and it's the democratic way of doing it, right? All of the original COVID stuff in the state of local emergency, it was all new, right? There's nothing new about a mask bylaw. The first one went in June 1st, right? Like this exists. So if we have an appetite as the EOC to implement a mask bylaw, then we should start developing that mask bylaw now so that it's correct for the context of our community. I don't think deferring everything to EOC and putting it all on administration's shoulders is the correct thing for a council to do, because now you're putting the public's going to then say, well, council, what were you thinking? It's like, well, it was state of local emergency, so it was administration. I think it's kind of the easy way out with this conversation. And if we have an appetite to implement mask bylaw as part of EOC, then let's develop the bylaw as council and represent our citizens that way. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Oh, I'm
I was
sorry.
in the queue too.
Go ahead.
So a couple of things, and I'm okay with bylaw. I mean, if we want to have that discussion, I guess the one thing too that
disease prevention, health, everything when it comes to, I know that, and I'm curious as to Mr. Martin's legally, because my understanding in asking questions is if it truly is disease prevention and it is a health risk in our community, in our province, that trumps everything. If they believe that there was, I mean, whether it's human rights, but that, you know, if there is a genuine concern, the provincial government could say under the Health Act that we mandatory make masks and nobody can dispute that. So that's there, and it's not been done as a provincial. The other thing too is one of the things that I can share, being part of AHS's information, but the tracking of active cases is very thorough. You are basically, I'll use the term loosely, but under house arrest. You are checked on a daily basis that you are following, and if you are not, then there is prevention put into place, whether it be RCMP, whether it be, but they are very adamant about any active cases and that they are self-isolated and are not. So there are things in place right now protecting our community that we're not necessarily aware of, that have nothing to do with masks. So there's a lot of things that are happening to protect our communities in a lot of different ways, that are active at this very moment, if you do in communities that have active cases. So I want the community to know that despite whether we wear masks or don't, our communities are being protected as much as possible from any outbreaks or any things of that nature. The only suggestion is if you're out in public, it can reduce potentially, protect yourself, protect others from possibly, but there's other ways that it can happen as well, whether it's your hand, shakes and things like that. So masks, as Councillor Stashik said, is just one thing. So I'm confident, without the use of masks, that we are taking already the necessary precautions to keep, our communities potentially at risk of any outbreaks. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. I've put my name up next. I would certainly support a bylaw in waiting, a bylaw to be utilized in the event that we needed it. We have flu season coming. I just don't think it would be the worst thing ever to have a bylaw there in the event we needed it. And being chair, I'm not able to make that direction, so I'd certainly support it if it was up there. Yes, sir.
It's interesting you say that, and I'm not going to, you said flu season is coming. We have flu season every year, and a lot of people get flus. There's some would argue that some flus are more at risk, but we don't have mask bylaws for flu season. We have, we don't have vaccination bylaws for it. People choose to vaccinate or not, but we have flus every year. We have a season of it. And I'm not saying, okay, the spread of COVID is a little different than a lot of the flus, yes, but some people argue, when you use that word, why don't we then have it during every season of flu season, right? So,
yeah. So in responding to that, you know what, if we had a bylaw in waiting, we may never have to enact it at all. Mm-hmm. We've been 6 months, 7 months with this COVID, and Hinton has only seen 7 cases. So if our, matrix or our high number is 10, 7 months we haven't even hit 10. So we may never even have to use that bylaw, but if we do, it's there. And another thing, should something terrible happen, worse than what's happening right now, and 10 is our number, but we see community spread happening at 4, we can walk right in, I'll tell you, and make a change to that bylaw. So it would not be the worst thing on earth to have a bylaw in waiting in the event that we had to enact it. And that's where I'm at. That's what I would support.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, it seems like there's 3 potential camps. So if there's no appetite, we have the opportunity to add this to the agenda. I'm of the train of thought that we are in a good position in Hinton. There are other mechanisms in place. And I said it, and I don't want to say that Councillor Waugh said it, but I'm only okay with getting more information on pros and cons and why other communities are choosing not to do it. Why? I just don't know. But I'm not in the camp yet to draft a bylaw yet without knowing if it's even good. And I personally, from what I've kind of researched and listened to from the province of Alberta, is kids going to school is a much larger issue. When children from kindergarten to grade 3 will not be wearing masks, I try not to use that argument of pinning one against the other, but that is the much bigger risk for breakout. But if there's a will, and we have 3 different potential ideas right now, if there's no will to move forward, we maybe reassess in a week or 2 weeks as we see what the province does, because today I sense that 3 or 4 councillors don't have the appetite to see a draft bylaw. So I'm comfortable moving forward and dealing with this another day, because I don't have that appetite, but there's also no appetite to get information, a very high level information, to continue this discussion either. So we're at a stalemate, to be honest, it seems.
Okay, so I'm sensing that we've come to an end to this discussion, and I'd like to move the conversation forward. All right, okay. So does anyone have any information items that they would like to present, or are there any? Additional information, urgent matters from council, and I will start with Councillor Stashek.
You have nothing? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Waugh.
Nothing for me then.
Councillor Hawes.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Councillor Nelson.
Nothing for me, Madam Chair.
Mr. Mayor.
Nothing, Madam Chair.
And I have nothing. And our CAO status report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing too much to report for status report, but the action pending list was circulated. Changes include just a couple of items that have been marked complete. No changes to the list or to dates at this point. I do have 2 items that I'd like to request some clarification from council, or I suppose one is for clarification and one is for me to provide clarification to council. I just wanted to provide a quick update to item MD 1960, and that's the funding request from Disc Golf for parking lot construction. That's scheduled to come before council on September 8th, so the reports are being prepared. Administration's been working with stakeholders on the report, has had several meetings with those stakeholders. But it's recognized through this process, and this has been expressed by the president of the HDGA as well, that a holistic discussion may be required regarding disc golf and the recreational asset to the town. Some of that input from council and the desire to have that piece of the conversation at the same time as the parking lot conversation will really help to influence what direction the parking lot conversation goes in. So I wanted to propose that at that September 8th meeting, administration could also prepare a high-level information report or seeking some direction from council regarding that relationship with disc golf and what we should be prepared to provide through budget. This isn't something that's been requested by council, but in that there's been a few different areas where administration's been providing support to disc golf through the preparation of the recreation lease extension, some temporary signage requests, and then this parking lot discussion too. It would be beneficial, I think, to the process to understand what the relationship the town has with disc golf. If that's not something that council's looking for, we can stick to the report on the parking lot only, but it's a discussion that will be coming up at some point anyway. So just wanted to offer that administration could prepare something for council if that's something you'd be willing to receive.
Councillor Haas.
So I guess the question, so putting it, so what you're looking potentially at is there might be an appetite to see if there was an appetite, but to town look at, take that asset on? Or I guess, no, I don't, I'm not clear on, you know, like, because right now it's volunteers and everything, but help me out there.
Sure, so it fits kind of in with that civic agencies discussion, but, and maybe that's not the route, but just to talk about, you know, some of the support that the town's providing, that extension of the rec lease, that's the town's recreational lease that's looking for an extension to support disc golf remaining on that property and continuing to provide that recreational asset. Okay. Looking towards the project for the parking lot, we're working with HIMBA as well on some of those discussions with stakeholders. It's very clear what the relationship is between the town and HIMBA. It's less clear between disc golf and even looking at some of the signage discussion that's gone on. Temporary signage was approved for disc golf, pending a conversation, I guess, further to what the relationship would be, maybe longer term. Again, that it does help the conversation around the parking lot. It's not essential to it, but if council, you know, if we're looking at entering into a project that's supported by that group, having a defined relationship would benefit that. And again, it was an offer to bring some information to council. Should you be looking to have that conversation, it might help the conversation around the parking lot. That's all. If council is okay having the parking lot discussion without, it's not something that we need to bring, but it definitely helps to clarify our position through that.
Thank you for that.
So how and when would you want council to get back to you with this?
Thank you, Councillors. I was looking for some guidance tonight. Just in preparing the parking lot report for council on September 8th, this was something that we kept bumping up against in preparing that report. So if there is, I mean, even, I don't know that it needs to be formal consensus or to be added to the action pen list as a separate item, but just if there's an understanding that information could be brought forward. If this is something that can wait until it comes forward from council on their own, that's, I just wanted to offer that.
Councillor Wall.
To me, if administration thinks that it would help provide some clarity and some context to the larger picture, then I'm all for it. On the other hand, if it's going to convolute the discussion, then please don't.
It would be two separate reports, so it's not to convolute it.
Thank you.
Nelson.
Yeah, I'm kind of a similar mindset, especially because this item was delayed. I think it was originally supposed to be coming in June, and we weren't able to meet that, and that's fine. I am concerned about the original discussion, original purpose being then lost in the shuffle of a bigger discussion that's not really achieving what we had set out to achieve with the original motion some months ago. Like, but again, whatever administration determines, as long as we can make sure we have that full original discussion with the original intent. If the discussion around that, what the relationship looks like, is one we're going to have in 3 weeks because a budget anyways, let's have it. You know, potentially we can, as council, be reaching out to people that we know are involved or interested in it and talking about both topics. So it could help us streamline some of our conversations with citizens as well. So I'm comfortable either way.
Sure.
Just one quick, if I may, but it just goes to this policy coming forward with civic agency is so important to have on the book so that we can kind of help with some of these conversations too, right? And is it eligible, things like that. So that's looking forward to that.
I can move on to the next item. This is the one that we were seeking some clarification, if that's okay to move forward. So there's a report due in September for MD 1759 on water service levels and delivery. Just seeking some clarification on expectations and intent around this item to ensure that what we're bringing forward is what council's expecting. In speaking with Mr. Hawk prior to the end of the break there, in particular looking at, so when this item came forward, there was discussion around metering within apartments and condos or multi-unit facilities. Is this the intent of the report coming forward, or was it was the intention to look at metering, water metering of the residential community? Commercial has already been achieved with exception to these housing facilities. And just wanted to clarify and kind of fine tune what that intent was. Administration's understanding was it was around the metering of apartments and condos and those multi-use facilities. Wanted to seek some clarification from council so we meet the intent of that report.
Councillor Halls.
If and please correct me if I'm wrong, but if I recall, there was a concern brought by one of those owners of a multi-unit facilities in regards to the usage of water that triggered that conversation, but that was a number of months ago that triggered it. So I believe if I made that's my recollection of it, is to look at the water usage and in those types of facilities. But I look to the rest of council for their memories on that one.
I know my recollection, as much as I would like, you know, how household meters, it is not water meters for households, it's for apartments and.
Because I think there was a pilot project with that in one of them, and that was the persons that came forward, but nothing really came from that. So that's what came from direction, I think, of it. So.
Thank you for the clarification. That was really just wanted to know what the scope of that report would include. So I'll pass that along. Otherwise, nothing further from me or for the action pending list.
Thank you. Are you able to give an update on our legislative services?
I am. Provided by Ms. Way. So we're almost there on hiring for this position. Should have an announcement before too long. And we're also well underway for the scheduling of ARB hearings. They're offering a Zoom option to those to attend through that means. And that's everything for the legislative update. Hoping to have that announcement out fairly shortly. Okay, thank you.
And from Ms. Anderson?
I have nothing.
Nothing to report?
No thanks.
Okay. And Mr. Merritt?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn? Oh, certainly. And all those in favor? And it's carried. You guys, thank you very, very much for being very supportive.